3 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon. Welcome aboard the post-game show. Ed Bird's at Master Control today. Elijah's kind of pulling a double duty today. Had to fill in for Gunner, which is heavy lifting. Did that this morning. But Elijah will be back in a little while to hang out. Before that, Jack Veltri will join me. Jay Phillips here, by the way. Hi. And I think Terry Ford's going to come back down for a little bit. So I got like a revolving door of folks to talk with. And certainly you, 803-404-6100. Interesting things going on as we all continue to, discuss Carolina baseball, to digest some of the things that Coach Paul Mainieri told Elijah and me on yesterday's program. A lot of folks picking that story up and reporting on it. A lot of fans weighing in. I had some interesting comments on Twitter. And I know right now, there's that fine line between anger and apathy. And I think we have seen some of both lately. The crowds against Florida were hang on one second here. There we go. Thank you. Wrong guy. I didn't know if you were pulling an Elijah, Ed, like where he has his new little toy of sound. Just some guy wanting to scream. But the crowds this past weekend say so much. And I really do think that that's the number one thing, if you will, and I think you'll all get my meaning. That's the number one thing that Jeremiah Donati has to look at. I've said before about a lot of things. When it comes to the capacity of any ballpark, arena, whatever, stadium, they build it to hold those people because they want it to hold those people virtually every night. Now, a football stadium is a little different than a baseball stadium. And I'm not naive here. You're not on a Tuesday at 7 going to get 9,000 people to go watch you play, a small school. I don't want to say any names as to pick on anybody. Relative to a Saturday afternoon when you have a big-time conference opponent coming into your ballpark, where you probably should expect a near-capacity crowd. And I've said it for football. When you see, again, without naming names, when you see smaller schools, FCS schools, and the corners of Williams-Brice or the corners of Death Valley and Clemson are empty, it's because that's just not as appealing. Or if the team is not doing well, then it's especially unappealing to fans, right? And that's where Carolina baseball is. And I'm only half joking, and y'all get the meaning I have here when I say that it wasn't all that long ago that, you'd be fighting people if it meant getting a ticket to a Carolina-Florida baseball game or any equivalent. I mean, when LSU comes to town next week, these were gold just a few years ago. And that's how far things have fallen now. Yeah, I have said, and I will maintain for now, that it's not time to call, especially in a first season, to call for just a complete upheaval and an overhaul of everything they're doing. Because I don't think that Coach Mainieri is in over his head, air quote that, in over his head when it comes to the management, if you will, of a Southeastern Conference baseball program. He knows how to do that. I don't know if he fully understood just what the roster was really going to provide this year. It's not Paul Mainieri's fault or anyone else's, if you will, that Eli Jersenbeck never threw a pitch or that Talmadge LeCroy broke his thumb. Or that now Ethan Petrie, who's been your best player for the last, ever since he's basically been on campus, is probably done for his collegiate career. Now, that's not excuses, because those things alone aren't going to turn South Carolina from a currently 5 conference win team to, say, a currently 15 conference win team. But, what is the ripple effect? And, those kind of things are fair to ask. But beyond that, do you have the wherewithal as a school, as an athletics department, to go and do what's going to need to be done? And Terry's not wrong. If you just heard us at the end of the halftime show there, You look at what it would cost to start over. And I made the joke with Elijah yesterday, if, to be hypothetical, and that's all I'm doing here, if you were to start over, it's going to cost you, $7, $8 million just to push the reset button. That's it. That doesn't get you anything but a fresh slate. Then what? Millions more, right? I mean, whatever you spend to be able to hit reset, you probably need that number just to get, that engine up and running again. And that guarantees you what in relation to others around the Southeastern Conference? Because if those schools that care the most, which is the vast majority of schools in the SEC, I'm really only looking at one that might not want to put much into it, and they're going to, Missouri, make some adjustments in the offseason from what I've read. What it'll get them, we'll find out. But if, as an example, if Tennessee and Florida and Vanderbilt and Georgia look around and others, but, and this would even include probably Clemson and North Carolina, look and say, ooh, hey, you know what? Down in Columbia, they finally figured it out. They finally have started to want to play in the new neighborhood. Because I think for too long, that's been part of the issue around here. Maybe not so much this particular season, but was South Carolina doing all it could to avoid spending more on baseball than what others are spending on baseball? And I think there's some validity to that. So, again, Jeremiah Donati is here for multiple reasons. I mean, Coach Tanner's time had run its course, but Jeremiah is going to have to come in, much in the same vein when Eric Hyman came in. I think that they came from Texas Christian as a coincidence, but it's an interesting coincidence in the sense, and we talked about this, but I'll just reiterate. Jeremiah, is here as much, if not more so, for the business of athletics than the athletics themselves. And that's not to say that he's not going to be able to handle the athletics themselves. He certainly can. He's proven that at Texas Christian. Proven it. That's why he's here now. But he's also proven what he can do at a place where it is not as high profile as some of its either conference brethren or just in-state brethren. Now, in the case of in-state, Clemson might have a higher profile in football, but Carolina and Clemson, in terms of what they can bring in, are pretty much equals. Yeah, and you can, if you want to haggle with me over, well, Clemson does this and Carolina does, but it's not like Clemson is Ohio State relative to South Carolina or vice versa. Y'all see the point. And Texas Christian is not Texas or Texas A&M or Texas Tech. And yet they keep themselves not only above water, they played for a national football title, they've been to multiple College World Series, they've had success in other sports, and Jeremiah is going to be expected to do that. But he's also got to put Carolina in a position financially to be able to compete with Georgia and Florida and Tennessee. And hold serve as best you can against the LSUs and Oklahomas and Texases and Texas A&Ms. That's the job. But doing it in baseball and trying to elevate Lamont Paris's program while at the same time keeping Shane Beamer's program where it is and then elevating it. And, oh, by the way, you have the premier program in women's college basketball. This is not going to be easy. Ashley Chastain has now done her thing in softball. There's a lot to spend money on and only so much to go around. But I had a conversation with somebody recently about the baseball program. And, again, it's a hypothetical, but hear me out and see what you think. I had somebody say, I don't think they can afford to do anything other than stay the course right now and hope it gets better next year. And I said, you have to hope it doesn't get to a point where they can't afford not to do something. And that brings me back around to the Florida environment. Florida. And I know Florida's not having a standout season either in terms of their own expectations. But still, South Carolina versus Florida. I don't have to remind any of you what that used to mean. And not just the matchup in Omaha, right? But matchups in so many seasons when these were two of the 3 or 4 best programs in the conference and in some respect, the country. We'll talk more about it with Jack Veltri. Certainly want to hear from you. Hit me on Twitter at JPhillips1075, station feed 1075 The Game. We'll get into some of those things throughout the day or, of course, on the Firehouse Subs text line, 803-404-6100. We'll also talk with Jack about a few football notes, including Shane Beamer showing, rightly, in my estimation, his frustration with the NCAA over the Rasul Faison situation. Carolina's transfer tailback from Utah State, hoping to get a final year of eligibility and hoping that because of a ruling the NCAA had a few months back, mostly about Diego Pavia, where Diego said, hey, I shouldn't have to operate under some of the same eligibility circumstances as other guys because my clock was different because I went to a 2-year college. And the NCAA said, okay, but was it more of a one-off? And Rasul's been in the same situation in terms of starting at a 2-year college. Shane's frustration, though, I think is apt here because they submitted, according to Coach Beamer, and why is he going to make that up? Because it's easy to verify. They submitted everything the NCAA needed to look at as soon as the semester started in January. And spring ball has come and gone for weeks now, nearly a month. Still no ruling. I mean, we're closing in on 5 months that the NCAA has had all of the necessary paperwork and records and whatever else to look at. What is taking so long? Seriously, think about it for a minute. And I realize that there might be a few, but there's enough people up there, I would assume, to look at cases like this, to have somebody or a couple of people this is all they do. But there can't be that many people in this current pipeline that it's taking 5 months to where you can't, over the course of a 40-hour work week, be able to figure this out. I mean, what's there to do? So Shane's right. And look, I'll talk to Jack about it here in just a minute. Is this becoming problematic if let's face it, y'all, graduation at Carolina is this week. So school's out. Now, a lot of these guys take summer courses, but for all practical purposes, semester-wise, school's out. When does this become an issue for the Gamecock roster? When this young man is more than likely expected to be the number one tailback on the team. You don't have a plan B for that right now. You've got depth, and you can certainly elevate guys up, but this is what you've been planning on. And there's precedent with other players in your own conference to tell you your guy should be granted the same level of eligibility. And yet, for whatever reasons, he hasn't. So I can feel the frustration. Jack will join us on the other side. He's going to hang out for a couple of segments. I got a lot to get to. Clemson and Notre Dame with a big story today. We'll touch on that. Andy Staples has ranked his 10 best jobs in college football. We'll touch on those for you throughout the afternoon as well. And what a gem by A.J. Smith-Shawver last night as the Braves shut out the Reds. So all that throughout the afternoon. But a lot of Gamecocks, including the stories swirling around the baseball program. Our buddy Jack Veltri, Gamecock Central on the other side. This is the postgame show. Love telling you about our good friends at Cato's Power Equipment. Why do I love them so much? Well, for one thing, they have fitted me with the right power equipment for what I like to do in my yard, because I like yard work. Again, I'm not out there all the time, but I've said many times before, if you're fortunate enough, like so many of us are, to be able to own a little piece of planet Earth for a short period of time, least you can do is take care of it, right? So I like doing that. And why do I like going to Cato's as much as anything else? I've also likened it to when you go to a tailor relative to buying off the rack. Now, is there anything wrong with buying off the rack? Nah, you'll get a nice suit or coat or whatever. But when you go to the tailor, you get that extra detail. You get somebody to talk with. They fit you perfectly into what you want. And that's what I've gotten at Cato's with my new Toro Time Master mower, my Flex Force blower and saw and so much other stuff. I love it, man. 4012 West Beltline Boulevard. Whether you do it for yourself, you do it for a living, go see Cato's. Eighteen minutes after 3 o'clock on this Tuesday afternoon. Welcome back into the postgame show. Jay Phillips here. Elijah pulling double duty today. And he told me that after doing the morning show this morning and then doing some things, you know, kind of clerical stuff around the office through the mid-morning, that he was going to go, well, I'll just say it. And now that Jack Veltri joins us on the guest line, he was going to go get lit. But apparently, Jack, he's decided that he wants to do the 5 to 6 o'clock hour here with me and kind of hold on to the gig for an hour today. Do you think he'll do it while he's lit, or did he just decide to wait until 6?
Well, I don't think there's anything more lit than co-hosting with you, Jay. So I think that's about as good as it gets. But, you know, if he wants to get extra lit maybe, then I could see why afterwards then.
That could be a show, though, man. That's you know, I'm here. We say a lot. We're here for the story. Yeah, so that could be that could be a story. Speaking of stories, and I'll blend in the local with a little bit of a branch out, but I did see today, as we are joined by our good friend Jack Veltri on the beat for Gamecock Central, and of course a pretty much daily fixture here in Columbia on the game. The Knoxville News-Sentinel had a columnist today that to take time out of everything going on in volunteer land to basically say just how bad things are with South Carolina baseball. I feel like that's rather telling when you've got a rival school, in this sport 4 hours up or so up the road. I don't want to say taking a shot, Jack, but at least saying, dang, you see what's happening in Columbia? Not good.
Yeah, well, I don't think it's a shot. I think you're right on that. I think it's just addressing, we're talking about a baseball program that is not that far removed from being one of those programs you talked about every year, right in the mix to go to Omaha, be in the postseason every year and fighting to get to a super regional advance. And, I mean, look, when people around the country are starting to take notice of this situation for the wrong reasons, that's when you know you have a problem. And, look, Tennessee played South Carolina a few weeks ago, and things were starting to get bad then, but I mean, they've gotten worse since then, I think, in terms of the product in the field just not being enough to win series week in and week out. And like I said, when people on the not just local side of things, but just in general are starting to examine this thing for what it is and see that it's a problem, that's when you know you have a real issue on hand.
You've covered this program now for several seasons and doing a fantastic job with it. As you've watched things unfold the last few weeks and especially this past weekend, did you even, being around them virtually every day, anticipate that it was going to slide to a point of where it is right now, that we're nearing historically bad status since Carolina joined the SEC?
Look, I've been on quite a few road trips with the team this year. When I went to College Station a few weeks ago, I thought I called it rock bottom after the series, I think, in an article. It truly was. When you lose on a walk-off home run on Thursday, you lose 17-0 on that Friday, and then you have a 12-2 lead, and then you end up losing 15-12. I didn't think it could get much worse than that. But what I saw this weekend at Founders Park, when you get outscored 39-8, and most of that came on Sunday when you're outscored 30-3, I mean, I think that's about as bad of a weekend as you can have because it just wasn't competitive enough. The thing with South Carolina is, for all the losses they've had, in most of these series, given a few games here and there where you get blown out or run ruled, it's been fairly competitive. It's just you have to play perfect baseball in order to win these games if you're the Gamecocks. But this past weekend, especially on Sunday, I saw a team that did not look competitive really much at all. And it's not like Florida is leaps and bounds better than Carolina. I mean, it wasn't that long ago they were kind of in the same spot that USC is currently sitting in right now. It's just Florida's kind of gotten out of it with playing better baseball. But, I mean, my goodness, this past weekend was just a really rough showing and kind of a saga of them as of late.
Coaches in all kinds of sports at all levels will often use the media to be sort of a conduit to players, much like, media is a conduit to fans. And on Sunday, and you were there, Paul MAINIERI, in so many words, said, if my guys are looking themselves in the mirror and telling themselves they're playing their best baseball and they believe it and they are, then so be it. But did you, based on the answer you just gave me, is why I'm taking you here, Jack, do you get the sense that there's a feeling from Paul that they're not and that he's trying to give them a swift kick in the pants?
I think subtly, yes. And I kind of asked him about it earlier today at media availability. And I rightfully so, I don't blame him for not really giving me an answer on it because he doesn't want to, throw anyone under the bus or anything because that wouldn't be right of him to do so. But he's talked about with you guys on your show before about how they need to go out and get guys who throw 98 and, hit the ball a long way. Obviously, it's a subtle way to say that South Carolina just doesn't have that. Jake McCoy is pretty much their only guy who can consistently touch upper 90s, and then you're down Ethan Petrie right now, who's your main home run hitter, and outside of that, you don't have a ton of guys who can hit the long ball. So, in a way, I feel like, yes, they're underperforming, but to be fair, they clearly don't have the guys that Paul is kind of looking for in terms of they don't have the home run power. That's been known for a while now. And I thought the pitching was going to be better. I will admit that. But the pitching just hasn't been where you want it to be, and it's kind of unfortunate when both things are kind of going on at the same time.
Yeah, I don't know if you heard Elijah yesterday. He did the math on the final 3 innings of every conference game South Carolina has played, and the ERA was a shade over 9, but runs allowed, and so when you include the unearned, and there have been some defensive miscues in those innings, Jack, as you've seen and know of, was over 10 in the final 3 innings of games. I mean, that's I can't recall a time when I've seen it get that bad. Walks, I think free passes. Carolina has like 52 more free passes than their opponents. And again, just in conference play, not taking into account the sweep by Clemson or the loss to North Carolina for upper echelon. So, I mean, this is something that goes beyond just we don't have a few horses. I mean, you mentioned maybe they have 1 or 2, and that's about it. This can't all be because Eli Jerzenbeck got hurt.
No, it's not. No, injuries are, I think, the farthest thing from an excuse you can use at this point. And let's not forget, and yes, I know Eli had the injury. It seemed like during the preseason, obviously it affected him because he just wasn't throwing really well at all on the mound in the preseason. But injuries are like the farthest thing from an excuse. Like, yes, you're missing Ethan Petrie right now. Yes, your catcher situation has not been great because Talmadge Lecrow, your starting catcher, has been banged up all year. But I think at the end of the day, part of it does have to do with the fact that, yes, the SEC is really competitive and stuff, but teams are finding ways to win the tight games at the end. And South Carolina, like you mentioned, the 7th, 8th, and 9th inning has been a real struggle for them. And it's just been a season with – it's not just one stringing issue that's the problem. It's a multitude of things, and that's kind of where you identify, all right, what are our problems right now and how are we going to fix that? That's something I feel like it's too late to really figure out at this point. You kind of just got to go into the off season and, whether it's personnel or whatever, you have to figure out, okay, how are we going to be able to win these games that we're not?
One of the things that I looked at talking to Jack Veltri, Gamecock Central, who's going to be with us here next segment too, talking some football after the spring and looking ahead to the summer. The attendance numbers against UF were pitiful. Whatever the announced was, not the same as what the actual was. And I made a point at the beginning of the show today, and I touched on it yesterday too, Jack. I want your take that might be, because it's so all-encompassing when you think about it, that might be the number one thing Jeremiah Donati now has to really look at here. I've got to get fans back in this ballpark as much to gin up interest in the team, but financially, if we're going to get somewhere, I got to have people buying tickets and beers and hot dogs and sodas and such. How much of that do you believe now really has to weigh in on everything around Carolina baseball?
It revolves around it. Like, the numbers this weekend, I was looking back at them because I'm, like, looking around the stadium. I'm like, all right, this is really, really bad with attendance. Like, it's been bad for some games, but, like, this is really bad. And when I see the numbers are well over 7,000 people in attendance, I don't buy it at all. And obviously that's just paid attendance. But, I mean, look, Friday night, I'll give South Carolina a pass because that game didn't end till about 1:30 in the morning. Right. But Sunday, beautiful day outside, a doubleheader. I know South Carolina hasn't been playing good ball, but normally around this time of year, people are showing up regardless of how the team is. But I think it just says a lot when people are frustrated with the program. They're frustrated with where the coaching is at in year one after coming in with a supposed one-year plan, and they're in a sense they're voting with their wallets, I guess, for the fact that things have not been going well. And it's been an issue, and it is something that Jeremiah, on the list of things that kind of have to get figured out with the baseball program, you have to figure out, all right, how are we getting people back in the seats? Because it's not going to be just promotions and stuff with the sun hats and the posters and the 50% off beer. That's not going to cut it. You got to do something else to put a winning product on the field, and then you'll get people coming back out to the ballpark.
Gamecocks at Auburn this weekend, close out conference play next weekend, interestingly enough, against Coach MAINIERI's old team, the LSU Tigers. Jack Veltri hanging out with us, GamecockCentral.com, and, of course, regular contributor here on the station. We'll come back on the other side, want Jack's take on a few post-spring football notes. This is the postgame show. How you watching what you watch or listening to what you listen to? How do you keep your home secure? How do you keep yourself comfortable? Well, you can do all of those things better when you call and work with my good friends at Integrated Media. 803-948-8327. Dave or one of the crew will come to your house, walk around with you. What do you want? You just want the best in, a new AV system, right? Amazing television, awesome Dolby sound built into the house, or the fantastic Sonos wireless speaker systems you can pick up and move wherever you want to. They can do that for you. You want to integrate those things with your security system, your lights, your thermostat, so that you can control it all. You could be leaving the office, turn all those things on, and walk into the house like you never left. Sound good? Yeah. How about an outdoor system that looks and sounds just like the indoors? Yes, Integrated Media does that too. All that and so much more. I love what they've done for me. I promise you, you will too. 803-948-8327. The best in home technology. Integrated Media. Talking a lot of Gamecocks. It's been an interesting couple of weeks, if not longer, for South Carolina baseball. Jack Veltri joining me on the guest line here for a couple of segments. I guess you're going to be covering some football stuff this week too, right? A lot of the Welcome Home tour going on, right?
Yeah, I was actually out there last night in Somerville for the Welcome Home tour and, heard from Lamont Paris and Shane Beamer and whatnot. But That'll be the only one I do this week is, I'm writing stories from that and then covering some softball and baseball here this week.
Well, then I imagine we'll go to football, and let's start with Shane Beamer's frustration over the Rasul Faison situation. The transfer tailback from Utah State went through spring ball, is enrolled as a student at the University of South Carolina. Spring semester, Jack, as you know, is now over, and yet Shane says final eligibility still not granted to young Mr. Faison. And he said they've had all the paperwork in Indianapolis for 5 months. No ruling. What are we waiting on? His frustration seems rather appropriate.
Yeah, I think it is appropriate because, you do everything that you're asked. The NCAA asks for paperwork. South Carolina gives it to them, and then they come asking for more paperwork, as Beamer put it yesterday, and then South Carolina obliges again and gives them what they need. And it hasn't seemingly resulted in any outcome, good or bad. And that's the trouble here. And obviously the NCAA's got a lot on their plate, as Beamer noted, with just so many different cases and lawsuits and whatnot. But this should be a simple one, right? Faison, has been in college, since being at Marshall in 2019. Yet he's only played 3 seasons of college football suiting up, for 2 years at Utah State and a season with JUCO. So what's the holdup? I got no idea on that front. But also, the fact that he's, South Carolina was, could have easily gone out and gotten a running back in the portal, but they didn't because, they believe that Faison is going to be able to suit up for them this year. And I understand Beamer's frustrations in that sense because they could have gone out and gotten a running back if Faison wasn't going to be eligible had they known, but that hasn't been the case. And they're kind of just left here wondering, amongst the other things in college football, what is the holdup with this?
Jack, I saw, and I forget the player's name, but I saw, and I think it was on y'all's website, that there was a kid at Rutgers that got a favorable ruling from the state courts in New Jersey, and, he's going to play. I'm just thinking here, does South Carolina need to do that? I remember when the state of Tennessee went to bat for Nico Iamaleava. We know how that turned out, but initially they went and they won. Are we getting to a point like that for Rasul Faison?
I don't know. It's a good question, Jay, and you brought that up and it was on our website. Kevin Miller does a great job for us over there. I wrote the story yesterday about Faison, and he mentioned at the bottom of his story, if you go and read it, like less than 2 weeks ago, the courts in New Jersey granted a temporary injunction in favor of Rutgers defensive back Jet Elad to play in 2025, and he's also a class of 2019 grad. So, with the JUCO passed. So, again, you don't want it to get to. You'd rather it just be simple and the NCAA just pass this thing and that Faison's able to play, or even if he's not, at least But the fact that it's getting to a point where you even have to talk about this, I think, quite frankly, is just a little bit embarrassing from the NCAA standpoint of, yes, again, they have so many things going on, but this should be a simple thing, yes or no. That South Carolina's done what they've needed to do. They've followed all the rules. What is the holdup is just, it's beyond me. I don't understand it.
One more thing on this, and this is going to be more of just, your educated opinion. Let's go worst case, and he's denied. At this point, Jack, if you go into the portal, it's not going to be for, your RB1, if you will, which is, I think, how they're pretty much portraying this young man at this point. You can certainly elevate from within, but how damaging might that be to what, Mike Shula has tried to install in his offense this year if suddenly the guy that you expect to get the bulk of your carries can't do it?
Well, you're trying to replace Rocket Sanders, right? And you brought in Faison with the thought of, okay, he's going to be that guy potentially. And yes, you have Oscar Attaway in that room too, competing for RB1 reps. But Faison, you did not just bring a guy like Faison who rushed for 1,100 yards last season at Utah State to, sit on the sidelines. You know what I mean? Like, you brought him in to be that guy. And so if it were going to be that, he's ruled ineligible or whatever, which you would have loved to hear that months ago when this thing started back in January, the fact that you would potentially hear that in like the summer at this point, that'd be rough because it's a big blow to your running back room. I mean, it's like losing a guy for the season with an injury, and then you got to rely on other guys to step up. Now, can they? Of course they can. Oscar Attaway's a veteran. He's been there, done that. He can be a reliable guy, I think. But then you have Matthew Fuller and Jawan Howell, who haven't played a ton in the SEC in their first seasons here with the program last year. So it's not ideal. You hope it doesn't even have to get to that point. But it would be a tough blow to not have Faison when you're counting on him to potentially be what Rocket was for this team last year.
One more on football. You can still go add some guys right now in terms of names that are in the portal. Do you believe that this coaching staff is done with filling even little holes in terms of positions of need or just places where they still want to have depth and competition?
Like Shane's said many times before, if there is someone out there that they feel like is the best fit for their program, they're going to go out there and do it. And I think there's always, options to go out there and, look for guys. Like there are still some players out there that are deciding whether they want to go to this school or that school. And I'm sure South Carolina has a few of those, potential players on their radar. So, no, I don't think they're done. But one interesting thing I will say from yesterday, hearing from Shane, is that, he was asked, with all the players that are deciding on where they want to go, is there a kicker involved in that? And, he said no, and he feels better about the guys that he has in there right now with Peyton Argent, Mason Love, William Joyce. I mean, I'd be a little bit concerned the fact that there's it's a double-edged sword. There's no one out there that they feel like is better than what they have right now, but also you're going with these guys who have not kicked in, the type of situations that you'd want out of maybe an experienced kicker. So, and there's still definitely time to go out there and get another guy if you want to. So I don't think South Carolina's necessarily done, but it seems like from a kicking standpoint, they're happy with what they have right now.
Couple minutes left here. Let me get you to close out with some of the things. I know you had a report on what Coach Paris had to say. A lot of folks looking at, almost a complete rebuild of his roster, maybe not the true one they were looking to go get, but they did bring in, some guys with experience. I know he's saying all the right things in front of Gamecock Club supporters, Jack, but take us into a little insight on how he feels and what this is shaping up to look like, considering where Carolina was last year in relation to, 14 conference members going to the NCAAs.
I mean, look, they had to rebrand, not redo this roster, right? I mean, only bringing back 3 returning guys, I think, is a step in the right direction because, quite frankly, you just weren't good enough last year to win the games that maybe you were winning 2 years ago. And, you brought in a lot of new faces. You had a Tracy Eagle staff that was going to be the, supposed crown jewel of your recruiting class from a transfer portal standpoint, but then he decommits and goes to West Virginia. So that kind of threw a wrench in things. And as Lamont put it yesterday, he feels like they did the best that they could, and that's not always what you want to hear when you are coming off a season where you went 12-20, but I do believe they have gotten better. I think they're getting more players that are fitting the Paris coaching style of he was looking for skill and experience, and he feels like he's gotten that. So, look, I know 2 of the first 3 years at South Carolina for him have not been good enough, but there was that 1 year where they were really good, and I don't think he's that far off from returning to that type of coach that can lead South Carolina back to the tournament. But again, it is a little early to really judge this thing until we get to the season. But he did his job in filling out the roster. Now it's just about how is it going to translate over to the court.
Is it a net win in some, or at least a push when you lose Eagle staff, but then Cam Scott decides to remain on the roster?
That remains to be seen. I mean, look, Eagle staff was averaging 18 points a game. Cam Scott was averaging about 2 points per game at South Carolina. And we know that the ceiling is really high for him, but we just haven't seen him meet it yet. So I don't think in a one-to-one comparison, Cam Scott is replacing what you lost with Eagle staff. Is it nice to have Cam back? Absolutely. But, I mean, I look at it more from the standpoint of how are you going to fill out those points? Well, it's probably going to be a collective effort between Michi Johnson and Kobe Knox and the guys like that you brought in that maybe can help solidify this thing. But, again, losing Eagle staff might be a really big loss. It may not be that big of a deal. But on the surface right now, losing an 18-point score is definitely a big deal.
Great stuff, man. Thanks for hanging out for an extra segment. We'll talk to you soon. No, you'll be around the station all week, as always. Appreciate you.
Yeah, appreciate it, Jay. Thanks so much.
That's Jack Veltri, Jack T. Veltri, to follow on Twitter, GamecockCentral.com. It's the postgame show. Eleven minutes in front of 4 o'clock on this Tuesday. Welcome back in. Jay Phillips with you here in the Herndon Chevy Studios. Ed Bird at Master Control. Big thanks again to our good friend Jack Veltri for hanging out for a couple of segments, talking baseball and football. Gamecock baseball, hurting. Gamecock football, feeling good. We'll have some more from Shane at the Welcome Home Tour stop last night coming up in the next hour. But right now, I want to kind of keep going with basketball. And while there are lots of new faces that'll be coming into the program, whether it's through the high school recruiting process or the portal, there's two familiar names on here. Lamont last night, cut 12 first here, please, Ed Bird. This is Coach Paris on how Meechie Johnson came back into the fold.
You know, it's 2025. I mean, and it's just things are different. Kids have a lot of, I call them kids, but they have a lot of options. They're trying to figure things out. And, you know, I just have had a relationship with his entire family. You know, Meechie probably called me a few times when he first got to Ohio State. It had nothing to do with anything other than he just wanted to check in with me. And so we've had a relationship, a good relationship, and obviously the basketball was good for him here. I keep telling him, I was telling him during the re-recruitment that he needs our fans and our fans need him. It was a unique relationship that he had with our fan base, and it was a really good one. And he thrived and fed off of that. And so when he decided that he was going to look at going somewhere else, you know, I don't know that some of his family members thought he had to look too far at all. But again, it's 2025, so we had to re-recruit him again. And but obviously we had a good relationship, and we're excited about him coming back.
I like that because Lamont says, you know, we need each other here. You know, there's a nice symbiotic thing going on here that Lamont's saying, because Meechie did. You know, even in that first season when things weren't great for the team record-wise, Meechie became an immediate fan favorite. You know, however you want to judge some of the shot selection, what I think everybody appreciated was the confidence. You know, we can joke and say Meechie Johnson's never made a shot he didn't like. It's true in some ways, but he knows he can hit them. And I think that shows his confidence. And then when he was paired with Talon in that backcourt and they did so well, you know, it took a lot off of him. I'll be curious this season to see how his role evolves in terms of what he's asked to do. It's certainly going to be as much, I believe, about his leadership as anything else. And we know that he's matured even more as a man over the last season or two. So he brings that back into Columbia, which is fantastic. And again, fan favorite. Yeah, he wants to be part of that. And last season was tough, losing his granddad up there, not playing as much for Ohio State, to be with his family and literally missing time from the team. Just getting back in the environment that makes him feel, you know, the best. And I think those 2 years in Columbia maybe showed that. I know he's from up that way and wanted to be a Buckeye, but it just didn't work out for whatever reasons as he wanted it to. So going to be fun to see him come back to Columbia next season. The other cut 16, please, Ed Bird. Cam Scott, of course, as we just talked about with Jack, you know, after a month in the portal, decided to hang around. Here's what Lamont had to say about that.
Cam's is a great young man, and he's got a really bright future. He does. Everyone grows at a different rate. I've tried to tell all the guys that we have on our team, particularly the young guys. And so there was some exploration as to what might be there. And again, it wasn't like, I think if you have those situations and then someone goes to the portal and then you show your true colors maybe, and it just turns out poorly, that you don't have the opportunity for something like this to happen for him to come back. He's a really good young man. He's a local guy, and I'm looking forward to really trying to help him grow his game to where he can contribute in a way that really helps us win basketball games.
If you just tuned in, when Jack Veltri was with us, I asked, you know, is the Trayvon Eaglestaff departure, before he ever really was a student, you know, offset equally by Cam's return? And Jack made the right answer, I suppose, in the sense of, well, here's a kid who was scoring, you know, 18 points a game at a good school and had a couple of big nights, including a big night against Alabama. I say big nights, a couple of really big nights, like one night over 40, one night over 50. I mean, he's just a scorer. Cam can do those things, but is he going to do that, you know, in the SEC? Look, would Eaglestaff have been asked to score 18 a night in the SEC? Probably not. But, you know, in terms of scoring ability and a fit, you'd like to think that there's a wash there somewhere along the way. Time will tell us when they start playing basketball. More from Shane Beamer. Interesting Clemson Notre Dame football news to touch on next hour, as well as the postgame show. You know, when you're out in, sorry, I had to turn my microphone on there. When you're out in the hot tub, just relaxing a little bit, you might say, well, I can't have like my boom box out here or anything like that because all it's going to do is just get all messed up. No, not necessarily, because now the folks at Griffin Pools and Spas are offering you a fantastic opportunity with your new Bullfrog hot tub. You can get a sound system built right in to the hot tub. You heard me right, okay? A free premium audio system that's completely built into the Bullfrog Spa. Or if that's not something that's up your alley, no sweat. They'll take off an instant rebate of $2,500 off the price. Hidden splash-proof speakers, built-in subwoofer, Bluetooth connectivity. You can soak in premium sound and never leave the water. But the sale ends March 27th. See Griffin Pools and Spas for more. Check, 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 check. No? We need to go to P2. Now, check, check, check. Good, good, good. Yeah, all right. All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Jay Phillips here in the Wetzel's Automotive Traffic Center. Got a few accidents to tell you about. Downtown Bull at Elmwood. Oh, that's going to be fun. Fish Hatchery near Church Street. I-20 eastbound before Faro Road. I-20 westbound before US 178. We've got Leisure Lane at Piney Grove and St. Andrews at Harbison Boulevard. Also, watch out for that one, especially because that's by the high school. We'll keep you updated here in the Wetzel's Automotive Traffic Center. I'm Jay Phillips. 3 o'clock on this Tuesday afternoon. Welcome back in. It's the post-game show. Jay Phillips here in the Herndon Chevy Studios. Did I say that already? Ed Bird at Master Control. Elijah Campbell will be along a little bit later on. Terry Ford. Kind of. Every time I do it like that, I still think of that old Dana Carvey bit when they were doing the Gerald Ford obituaries.
I feel like Gerald Ford.
Gerald Ford
Started to look like him.
killed by a tiger today.
So good. Remember when Chevy Chase played Gerald Ford?
Yeah.
Like that first year of Saturday Night Live.
And then met him. And that was like President Ford said, yeah, Betty and I enjoy your program.
So funny.
Yeah.
His Gerald Ford was so
Falling
hilarious.
over. Well, because one time.
Remember he's dragging the stuffed dog everywhere?
Yeah, bless his heart. Like Gerald Ford, tumbled down the steps a little bit one time on Air Force One.
And so that was a joke from now on.
Yeah.
He fell down all the steps.
Just get those slide, like the emergency slide. That way you don't have to worry
I
about it.
miss when we had a sense of humor.
Yeah.
God, that was so funny back when we had a sense of humor.
I don't know. I think they still do a pretty good job on that show.
I'll be honest, I haven't watched it in forever.
You should, because
Should I get back?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I've always been a fan, so I've never really stopped. But
I'll be honest with you. I'm trying to think of when I got out. Was it after Farley and all those guys?
It's been a while then.
I forget. But I just.
Because I tell you, the
Kinda
Will
wanna-
Ferrell years with
No, Will Ferrell. I watched the Will
Forte
Ferrell stuff. I love the
and Terry
cheerleaders.
O'Terry, yeah,
That was good. So probably after Will Ferrell and all that crew,
But,
I think that's when I stopped.
Yeah, Kate McKinnon and Kristen Wiig are brilliantly funny, and they were awesome. They're obviously gone
They're
now.
all gone. And what's her name doing the news was phenomenal.
Tina Fey.
Yeah, I mean
Amy
that's
Poehler.
when I checked out. After that crew left,
Okay.
I checked out.
Yeah.
So I got checked back in.
I would.
All right,
I
I'll
think
give it a
it's
whirl.
great. You know, look, there's people. Some people just don't like it. Some people, whatever, and that's fine. I see criticisms like, I remember when Saturday Night Live was funny. It's like, well, saying it's not funny because you don't like something that they picked on isn't the same.
See,
and believe me, they're equal opportunity.
I look,
I
and
assure
maybe
you.
it's just me.
Like
I
Dana
just like-
Carvey's Joe Biden.
Oh, my God.
He's like, hey, what's going on here?
See, I just like to laugh,
Yeah.
right?
Well, you will.
And I can, even if you make fun of something I like, I'm still going to laugh.
Yeah.
That's just me. I can laugh at something even though you're making fun of something that I think is cool or near dear to my heart or whatever.
Dana Carvey as Joe Biden was great. They had Jim Gaffigan play, was it Waltz, the VP candidate?
The VP candidate.
You know, and he was just so. He's like your dorky uncle.
No, I like that.
You know,
So
and the guy
guy
that's playing Trump, James Austin Johnson, like his mannerisms. I mean, if you thought Alec Baldwin,
I thought Alec Baldwin was great.
Okay, I think this guy's better.
Oh, is he
and
better?
Baldwin was good.
Okay.
I think this guy's better
All right.
because he's just his pauses and his inflections are just they're better.
All right.
Because he's not trying to be almost as over the top as Baldwin.
Baldwin was way over the
because
top,
sometimes
right.
you go over the top
Sure.
on purpose when you're doing that kind of thing. But it's
All right.
anyway.
All right, man.
Anyway,
You talked
there-
me into it. I'll give it a whirl.
There you go. Good stuff.
I'll give it a whirl.
Thanks again to Jack Veltri for joining us in the last hour. I want to get your take. Excuse me, your take on the Rasul Faison situation and what's taking so long. Well, you know, we need some more paperwork. Well, what do you need? Either he is or he isn't. This whole stringing along of eligibility, you know, you've got precedent for others that have been granted this. Why are we waiting 5 months?
Let me ask you this. I'll throw this back your way. I feel like that this whole process of anything involving the NCAA is so convoluted and is so filled with people who it feels like their job, they go to hire you, they go, hi, so do you do things in an efficient manner? Yes. Well, we can't hire you here at the NCAA. I think they are so piled up in inefficiency and bureaucracy that if you walked in there, and it's, you know what it's almost like? You ever watch that show Hoarders?
Yes.
And they show you a garage,
Yeah.
and you go, mother of God.
Yeah.
I think if you walked into the NCAA and you looked at...
Yeah, you can't even move.
You just, oh my God, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it's, I don't think they purposely have singled out Rasul Faison in South Carolina.
yeah.
I think they are so inefficient and so covered in bureaucratic nonsense that we said, this should have taken no more than 4 weeks. If that, right?
I'm just wondering. Like, I agree with you. Look, yeah, and I don't ask it to think that they're singling someone out. I'd like to know how many other young men and women are in his boat. Because he's not. This is not unique to him. Again, there's precedent of that kid at Rutgers. Right. There's one example. Diego Pavia got his extra year granted. So I'm just thinking, like, all right, well, and the Pavia one happened seemingly like that.
That day.
Yeah.
It's like, it was almost like he went through a drive-through or something.
Well, but it's because they threatened a lawsuit. I mean, I should.
So is that what Faison has to do? Threaten a lawsuit?
I mean, and I'm only half joking, right?
I'm only half
does,
joking with you.
Does South Carolina go hire whomever and go like, yeah, 5 months is enough. We're filing a lawsuit.
Look, whether it's yes or no, and it feels like if you read the backstory of this, it should be yes when you see some of these other ones, right? This should be yes. I mean, really, he's only played 3 years.
Yeah.
And the way this thing has gone with other eligibility, you figure, okay, this is a no-brainer. We get it. He's popped all over the place, kind of, but he's only really played 3 years. Well, the junior college thing, Pavia's already kicked that door. Stamp this thing and move it forward. But if for some reason you say no, then say no and let's get it over with, and then you can appeal it. He can take you to court and win like everybody does, whatever. But this thing has gone way too long, and I get Shane's frustration.
I'm serious because, and I asked Jack, at what point does this become very problematic? Right now, I would say it's problematic. At what point does it hit the next level to go before you get to worst case scenario where he's deemed ineligible, and then you're like, and it's not. I'm not knocking the other backs on the roster. I think they like the fact that they've got some pretty good depth. But let's also just be perfectly honest in the sense that this kid was brought in to be the number one. Competition, sure. Sure. Mm-hmm. But you don't bring in an 1,100-yard back and go, "Hey, buddy, you get back in. You're fifth in line, and let's see what happens here." Like and it's not also again, there's a middle ground of you're not promised anything. I think the only time they've done that since Shane got here was with Rattler.
Let's be honest, there was no competition with Rattler,
and to some degree with Sanders, but with Rattler, it's like, yeah, you're coming to start.
Yeah.
And I think every other
there's a competition.
Yeah, every other quarterback knew it too, and I think they were all like, "Oh, cool." All right.
Right, Spencer's here.
You're bringing Spencer Rattler in. All
to
right,
your point, Faison was brought in to get carries.
Yeah.
He's not brought in here to, like you said, to compete for something. He's going to compete, but he's here to carry the football, whether it's 1A and 1B with Attaway, whatever the case. This is why Faison's here. Now, look, I like Hal. I like Fuller. I think they got a lot of potential, but they're unproven. Attaway's really unproven as a one. Faison was bringing in to make a difference, right? And so if you don't have him by the start of summer camp, you're kind of not saying the end of the world's here, but now you got to shift off to plan B or C, right? When you had a plan A that involved Faison.
And if you do just want, for the sake of the discussion, a body, right, to make sure you have a full room, just, in case of emergency break glass kind of a guy, well, is he out there now? I mean, at this point, I'd say no.
You got eligibility?
I don't, man, and they don't want me anyway.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
I'm more of a right guard build.
I don't know. You're right. 1952 right guard, maybe, dude.
Even then, I assure you.
You could be a long snapper today with what the weight you got to carry.
No.
I just think, though, you're right. This is becoming a frustration. You don't want to become a massive problem. And right now, okay, what's today? Help me out. May 6th.
May 6th. Tuesday,
so you got
May 6th.
A few months till summer camp, but you don't want to find out a day before summer camp what's going on. This thing has to get done this month.
That it took literally a full school semester, or it's taken, and we still haven't gotten a decision, is embarrassing. Yeah. And again, I come back around. Seriously, do you just need to sue them?
It works. All you do is you
seemingly
sue them,
does,
you get
Terry.
stuff done, man.
It's unfortunate that we again kind of kid, but only so much. I mean, there's truth in the humor here, right?
Yeah.
Other dudes have sued you, and you just went, okay.
Well, you're the Washington Generals of the courtroom.
Yeah.
So you don't even want to go in there.
Yeah.
And that's what you do. You threaten a lawsuit and you get your way. And that's sad. But you know what it is, too, now that we've kind of opened the door on all this, Jay, we just see how inefficient the NCAA has been probably for a long, long time. We just didn't know because we didn't have access to it. The more you see, the more you just shake your head and go,
right.
You ever know a guy that falls forward in life? The fall forward guy?
Yeah.
That's what I feel like the NCAA is.
Yeah.
Despite the fact they just keep falling forward on their face,
right.
Things keep working out for them because it's $1 billion industry. They almost succeed despite themselves.
Yeah, I can think of one guy. I'm not going to say.
Want to give a name?
No.
No name?
No, I'll tell you off air.
Okay.
You never met him, though, so it wouldn't matter anyway. On this note, real quick, Ed Bird, please, cut number 11. This is Shane Beamer at the Welcome Home stop last night in Somerville. His thoughts on the Rasul Faison situation.
No, and it's getting frustrating, just to be completely frank. I understand the NCAA has a lot on their plate, Hale, but the fact that they've had everything that they needed from us since January, and we don't have an answer is frankly disappointing. We've given them everything they needed back in January. They asked for more. We gave them what they needed. They asked for more. We gave them what they needed. We've been in contact with other schools that he was at to get stuff from them that they needed. And, again, I know they have a lot on their plate, but the fact that we're now in the middle of May and we still don't have an answer, and we just went through a portal window where we didn't add a running back, but we don't have an answer on whether or not we're going to have, what would it be, 3 scholarship running backs on our team, or 4 or 5, whatever it is. And that's tough when you start talking about planning for 2025. So to answer your question, no, and it's getting frustrating.
I think everybody needs to just hit Shane with their favorite attorney on Twitter. Just
honestly, that's really the way you got to probably handle it. After I'd give them, like I said, you want to give them the rest of May? Okay, fine. Yeah. But at some point, you got to push these cats. It's the only thing that seems to work.
Yeah, I was saying earlier, semester's over.
Yeah.
Semester's over. I mean, a whole semester has gone by, and you haven't given us a decision. And to your point, I get it. Stacks of stuff here and there. I mean, do we have, one guy who's 27 years old, swimming in it, and he's working 12-hour days because they don't give him anything else to work with? Then okay. But I got a hunch, even with their inefficiency, they've got bodies. So again, how many people are in this boat? What else does this department or person do that it takes this long? Oh, yeah. Hey, my bad. The folder it slipped under the printer.
Sorry, man.
Yeah.
Oh, it's underneath. It was underneath my calendar on my desk.
My bad.
Wow,
the cleaning crew came in, have the thing, and then they just, that's what it feels like we're doing here.
Tyler and I joke all the time because, they have to have a committee to form a committee to set a committee to go through Faison's file.
Yes.
Because that's what they were about, committees.
Yes.
And they're about just red tape and bureaucracy. And I think that sometimes you get a lot of smart people together, and you can be really, really smart, but not be very efficient. Or sometimes you're really, really smart in a certain area, but when it comes to logic, common sense, and processes, you have no clue. It almost feels like the NCAA hires those kind of people.
It does feel like it, and that's one of the things. To be serious for a minute, you make a great point. When Greg Sankey was part of the transformation committee, whatever they called it, and then immediately, and this is going to sound like a slam, and I don't intend it, but oh well, they paired him up as co-chair with the athletics director at the University of Ohio, not Ohio State. And it's right away, you're just saying, yeah, we're going to try to involve everybody. And the point of the power schools was, no, what we're trying to do is transform the way we do things through our means. It's not to say that your means aren't good for you, but we've talked about it, Terry, without naming a name. There's a Division I school in South Carolina whose athletics budget is about the same-ish as South Carolina's basketball budget.
Think about that for a minute.
And it's a Division I school.
They just don't. You don't operate in the same
stratosphere.
No, not at all.
There's that. More from Shane coming up in a bit. On the other side, if you haven't heard about this, interesting news today between Clemson and Notre Dame when it comes to football. What do they have planned, and will it actually come to full fruition? We'll discuss when the postgame show returns. Waking up feeling a little stiff might be time for you to get in and see the pros at the Joint Chiropractic Centers. Back, neck, shoulder, or joint pain, they're ready to get you back in the game, and you never have to worry about appointments or insurance. You may say, all right, I'm interested, but I've never been to a chiropractic center. What exactly happens? Well, for just $29, you can set up an initial consultation, exam, and adjustment and figure out if what's going on at the joint is right for you. Plus, they're FSA and HSA approved. And as I said, you never have to worry about appointments or insurance. Monday through Friday, 10 to 7. Saturdays, 10 until 4. Here in the greater Columbia area, Harbison Boulevard, Forest Drive, Roberts Branch, and Sunset Boulevard. They're convenient, they're affordable, they'll help you maintain a healthy body, and they can help you prevent those nagging, reoccurring issues. Tell them we sent you. Learn more at thejoint.com, and remember this, you don't have to feel bad to feel better at the Joint. Welcome back in. 19 minutes after 4 o'clock on this Tuesday. Jay Phillips, Terry Ford hanging out. Ed Bird at Master Control. Elijah Campbell will be along in a little bit. Again, Elijah played the role of Bill Gunner today. The difference is that Elijah is almost 6.5 feet tall. So there's that. Just saying. Playing the role of Bill Gunner when being well over 6 feet tall. You're like, you're not Bill Gunner. That's not even close. Just saying. All right? Just give it, it's a fact.
Eerie how much they look alike in height.
That's right. Well, I said to Elijah yesterday, because people have said, like, they see the picture of Elijah and me for, like, this show promo.
You look
so much
tall as Gunner.
Yeah, I look so short in that. I think it's just the way where Elijah was standing and how I was standing and how he was kind of...
You could be shrinking. You're getting older.
Well, I could be. I mean, I kind of think that's probably true. But nevertheless, but Elijah looks like he's about... a good 1.5 feet taller than me in that picture.
He almost looks like Chewbacca compared to you. He's gigantic.
So I don't know if he had on like platform shoes.
I don't know what it is.
And if I was barefoot, I don't know.
How funny would it be him standing next to Gunner?
Well, that's what I'm
Because you're like a foot taller than Gunner.
Well, a foot, but I am taller than Gunner.
Yeah, still.
So there's that.
But you are shrinking.
You want to take over while I watch the rest of this Champions League game? My team's not playing, but it's a heck of a game.
We've got to block soccer on these TVs, man. You're insane.
Yeah.
You are insane.
The difference. Somebody asked me the other day to compare it, and I was like, imagine being at work watching the NFC or AFC championship game, but it's on a Tuesday, in European time at 8 o'clock. Like, at least thank God those games are Sunday afternoon, right?
Sure.
But this is the equivalent of that. So imagine, like, if your favorite team, imagine the Ravens, like tomorrow Arsenal plays, and if they win,
What time is this tomorrow? Like
3 o'clock.
Our time?
As soon as I start, 3 o'clock.
Of course.
8 o'clock England.
Basically, you'll be massively useless tomorrow.
9 o'clock in Paris. And, but imagine, for me, let's just say, it's, Broncos, Steelers, in the AFC title game, but I have to watch it while at work. You can't work.
Of course not.
You can't work.
No, not at all.
So that somebody did ask me. I was like, that's what it was like for me last week. And then the week before with Real Madrid, it's like, imagine watching the divisional round at work. Like, I didn't schedule these things. I would rather them do it later, but I don't live in Europe.
I was just saying, did you get in contact with those folks saying you're screwing with my job?
And in very angry French from some office in Switzerland, they told me what I could go do with myself. And I was like, well, I just wanted to let you know that I'll still be watching. And then they thanked me and said, we're just kidding about that insult, you American, whatever you are.
Well, that's us, though, as Americans. Can you change that time? It's really inconvenient for me.
Can you do a brother a solid here?
I am an American watching this.
Yes, they didn't.
They don't care.
Yeah,
they don't care.
They didn't seem to care. Clemson and Notre Dame today. Well, it's not really officially official yet. That's the thing. But multiple outlets reporting that the Tigers and Irish will announce a 12-year scheduling agreement. It'll start in 2027, run through the 2038 season. They have met a few times in recent years and had some pretty good games. Athletics director Pete Vivacqua of Notre Dame said, it's been such a great rivalry. We want to see it happen every year. It's historically been a great back and forth. I think we could see it continue to develop into one of the great rivalries in college football. I like this. And I said on Twitter today, and I'll stand by this, I believe Clemson needs this much more than Notre Dame needs this. Clemson wants to find a way to elevate its profile, and it's already a high profile. But in terms of how the ACC is going to restructure payments, how you do on television is basically going to help you. And so this will provide Clemson an annual matchup where, and listen, you made a great point. You and I were talking this morning off air. And while you didn't name a name, basically Notre Dame could play, a small town JV team and probably get 5 or 6 million watching it. When they play a really big team, you'll get 10, 12, maybe upwards of 15 million to watch it. So Notre Dame is just fine. Thank you. But this will definitely help Clemson. But Notre Dame probably could have reached out to a lot of people. I'd love to learn more about how they settled in on Clemson, other than the fact that this also checks one of those boxes for Notre Dame's ACC.
That's where I was going.
Yeah.
I think, if you're Notre Dame, you look at the high-profile teams in the ACC, right? Because you want to check the box.
And there's
so many.
3 of them right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe 4 if Belichick does something.
Well, maybe. And until we see that, there's 3, right? Pretty much. Yeah. So if you're Notre Dame, you look around and, all right, Florida State, you thought they were back until last year. And then you look at Miami, they're kind of back-ish, but you don't know if they're really back. And really, Clemson over the last, 10 years now, 10, 12, 14 years, has been the most consistently good to really good to playoff good program in the ACC. So if I'm Notre Dame, I'm like, out of those schools, I feel better about Clemson being really good 10 years down the road than I do about the other ones, and I check a box. To your point, which I think is an excellent point, so you kind of kill two birds with one stone.
Do you believe
No.
that they'll play all 12 of these?
Who knows, man? In the world we're going into, we don't know what's going to happen, right? We don't know playoff formats. We don't know if there's rev share, not rev share. We don't know. And even if you have rev share, who's going to take that to court to blow that up? We don't know if all these schools are going to break off into their own super duper leagues. I'd probably say no, because who knows what this world's going to be.
My thing, I'd like to know, and maybe we learn more of this, what are the out clauses? You know, we saw recently, not to try to compare them, because I don't think either one of these teams would want to bail. And yes, I use that verb. I think Nebraska bailed on Tennessee. Mm-hmm. Now, Nebraska tried to use the convenience of, hey, we need the revenue, and we're renovating the stadium, and we just need another home game, and we can't play Tennessee that year because we have to go to Knoxville. Like,
exactly. I just threw up in my mouth when you repeated it. Yeah.
So I don't think Clemson or Notre Dame is going to pull that one, but I would like to know what the out clauses are and what the stipulations are for breaking the contract, for maybe postponing a game, even canceling one outright. Because by 2031, I'm kind of with you. That'll be 4 or 5 times they play this thing. And at that point, is Clemson in another conference?
Who's where and where's what, right?
Or is there enough in terms of Clemson, Florida State, Miami, maybe a few others getting that extra TV money and being made whole financially in a relative sense to where you're like, all right, we'll stay. We're good. I'll be curious. And again, I still don't believe the Southeastern Conference and Big Ten Conference really want to grow anymore. I just don't know how you really make that work anymore. You're still not going to see everybody every year anyway.
I feel like the Big Ten would open their doors for Notre Dame, obviously. And North Carolina is the plum for both of those conferences. The next man up is North Carolina. Let's just be honest. If the SEC is going to expand, they're going to go to North Carolina.
You're going to certainly you're going to get right of first refusal.
Yeah. So
in both leagues, I 100% agree with that.
I just don't think. Who are you going to go to 18? Everybody's going to be at 18, 20 teams, whatever.
Well, just how are you going to play everybody?
And what you're going to do, and how's it going to break itself out? Now you're going to go divisions again? I mean, so I think everybody's taking a breath right now, except if Notre Dame jump back into play, then they'd all start, and
I don't see Notre
around.
Dame.
But when Notre Dame got the deal they got from NBC,
the new one,
that opened up the door for Notre Dame to stay independent.
Absolutely.
Because they begrudgingly were listening to conversations from the Big Ten, because remember, they're mad at the Big Ten from 100 years ago.
Yeah.
But because that makes sense. And I think once Notre Dame got the deal from NBC, they went, you know what? We're good.
Yeah.
Now we don't need to be in anybody's conference. And the college football playoff is going to keep the door open for the Irish.
Well, it is, and we are basically getting ready to see the college football playoff change just enough to where the initial things Notre Dame agreed to, in other words, not being able to be one of those top 4, that may go away as soon as this summer.
Exactly.
They may have only had to suffer through that for 1 year. And if I'm not mistaken, they played for the national title.
Championship.
Yeah.
Boy, that showed that Notre Dame.
They got a home game, man. Again, that's still better to me.
Yeah.
Still better to me to have a home game. Come back on the other side. One more bit of interesting college football news to get to. Andy Staples, our good friend Andy, now with On 3, gave us his top 10 jobs in college football. But it's not necessarily what you think. He and Ari Wasserman on their show this morning took it from the standpoint of if the job were open and there were candidates that need the resources to be successful, who's got the jobs? We'll go do that for you when the postgame show returns. Guys, when you're not feeling like yourself, might be time to get it checked out. Don't be embarrassed. Yeah, okay, I get it. Some things can be embarrassing or, not what you're really looking to talk about. But when you're doing so with medical professionals that are in the business of making you feel better, then you need to do it. And that's what Dan Balknight and his team at the men's clinic are all about. No such thing as one-size-fits-all treatments. You will have a one-on-one consultation. Dan will talk with you about what's going on in your life, what you've been missing. It could be, mentally related. It could be physically related. It could be the two of them. Because, again, if you're not feeling good physically or mentally, it's going to have an effect on the other side of the coin. It's that simple. Do it for yourself. Do it for your family. Get to feeling the way you want to with the experts in healthcare for men, and that's the men's clinic. 803-875-MENS, and learn more about them right now. The Men's Clinic, SC.com. And it is some traffic time here. I get to do this, like once a month. Always fun. Not fun, Bull at Elmwood. And hopefully that one gets cleared up here shortly, because all that's going to do is back things up for anybody getting out of town a lot of different directions. Bull at Elmwood, be careful. Fish Hatchery near Church Street, I-20 eastbound before Faro Road, I-20 westbound right before US 178. St. Andrews at Harbison Boulevard, still listed as out right near the high school. Be careful. Farming Creek Road between Trier Shoals and Highway 176. Broad River at St. Andrews. My goodness, we have some big intersection accidents today. And Whaley near Wayne over near campus. Y'all be careful out there. More traffic coming up. Talking some off-season college football. Just gave you the news on Clemson and Notre Dame ready to announce a 12-year home-and-home scheduling agreement. It'll check the ACC box for Notre Dame. It'll provide a high-profile opponent for Clemson to up their television revenues. Provides the same thing with Notre Dame's strength of schedule as an independent, too. So there's a lot there. By the way, real quick, I bring this up a lot when Clemson scheduling and things come up. The Southeastern Conference is more than likely going to 9 games, and that does worry people when they've seen the Bedlam game go away, or for the years when A&M didn't play Texas and things like that, and what would that mean for Carolina Clemson? And then somebody will say, oh, no, there's a law. There is no law.
No law.
No law. But I don't have any concern over Carolina Clemson going away because, they're of conference schedule expansion.
No.
Carolina and Clemson are going to play. And believe me, if any kind of push came to shove, then there could be a law.
Well, absolutely. Oh, yeah, I could see that happening.
But as it stands now, I just like to remind people because you'll see it when things pop up like, oh, well, it doesn't matter in South Carolina. There's a law. No, there's not a law.
There's not that, you see like Oklahoma State. That whole thing was, a lot of it was Gundy and Oklahoma State feeling we're the redheaded, toothless stepchild Oklahoma, and there was this extra to it that was
spite.
A lot of jealousy and things. This one, Dabo and Shane get along just fine. There's not an animosity where there's that extra layer of crud to it like some of the other ones. I would, this is going to keep going.
No, I have zero concern. Yeah. I have zero. Not that became part of it, but I saw when there were some folks talking about it this morning, like, well, hey, if you do things like this plus a 9-game schedule, what does that mean for certain rivalries? And
you can play them.
Yeah, no,
a lot of people do it.
I got again. I when I say I have no concern, I have zero concern about Carolina Clemson rivalry.
I think you're correct in
and if for no other reason than when COVID hit and they couldn't play because of that, like how bad that was that year, like it was awful.
Yeah,
it was awful. Like, I mean, of all things, like wait, can't we? Nope. Can't we do? Nope. What if we try? Nope. Like I was like, really?
Yeah.
And I still think they probably, you know what? Again, they should have just played. Like, what are you going to do? Who's going to do something? You going to get slapped on the wrist by Jim Phillips and Greg Sankey? We told y'all, you know what? You're out of the league for a whole year.
I'm sure that would have happened, right?
You're in timeout.
We'll teach you.
Yeah. We told you, boys, not to go out in the backyard and do that after dark.
I want 500 sentences. Yeah. We'll never do that again.
Yeah, Bart Simpson on the
Yeah.
We will keep playing our rivalry game. Andy Staples, speaking of him, today he and Ari put out their top 10 best college football jobs from a head coaching perspective, primarily. Not that's kind of what the exercise was. I'll roll through these and then we'll kind of touch on because I did hear what Andy had to say about them. Number 10, Penn State.
Okay.
All right, and he made mention that they seem to be now getting to a point of like, oh, we get you with recruiting certain people and maybe upping the ante a little bit when it comes to what we do financially. Number 9, Clemson. His point being this is, and you just made it from a different story. This is, as we speak, Gamecock fans, if you have to plug your ears, you do, but facts are facts. This is the premier program in the Atlantic Coast Conference, which is a power league.
Yep.
Can Florida State get there again? Maybe. Can Miami do it again? Maybe. Can Belichick do it? No.
I don't know a whole lot.
And Georgia Tech and Virginia Tech trying to punch. Pittsburgh and Louisville trying to punch, but no. So Clemson, number 9. And again, a lot of this is done through the lens of a coaching vacancy and what a premier coach would be looking for to be successful.
You think about this, Clemson, when it comes to generating revenue, is in the top 15 also in the country. And 3, Dabo's been anti-transfer portal and anti-NIL, but Dabo's basically living in the 1990s.
Sure.
If a new coach came in there, I'm sure a lot of that would turn, and a lot of folks in the upstate would throw bags, so to speak, at all that.
They do already. It's fine.
No, they don't.
It's fine. Number 8, Michigan, kind of the same vein as Penn State. Like for a long time, it felt like Michigan was like, we're Michigan. Come play here. Why? Well, we're Michigan. And then Jim Harbaugh, kind of like with Georgia a few years back, it's like, well, we're Georgia. Come play here. Mark Richt, great years, right? But not great enough. Like, why? Well, we're Georgia. Come play here. And then you realize, you know what you need? You need that little extra edge, a little bit more talent, but somebody to kind of put it all into play.
Real quick, compared to that is like North Carolina basketball. I talked to someone who was an alum, and they said, these kids come in for the recruiting visits, and they walk them down that hallway of champions and legends, and you got Jordan here, and you got just iconic college basketball players who became really good NBA players and all that. And these kids go, yeah, it's really great. How much you give me to come here?
Yeah.
I mean, this world of come here because we're fill in the blank is over.
Yeah.
These kids now go, yeah, that's really great. What's your NIL situation? What do you got with collectives? I don't care about what happened in 1952.
Ari Wasserman on their show today, when they were discussing their top 10 list, made an excellent point, and I'll hit pause on the list because I want to bring this up now that you did. He said the lifespan of a championship, even in terms of a recruiting tool, 5 years. And his point was this: for the kids you're recruiting, and this is still primarily from a high school recruiting standpoint, for the kids you're recruiting, you start recruiting them when they're 16, which means if you didn't win in 5 years, they were 10 or 11 when you won. They don't care. By the time they're in high school, that's ancient history.
Right.
Now, unless they are a fan in state growing up and remember the rah-rah.
Because they got the rah-rah from the family.
Yeah.
Generations of rah-rah.
But if you're, let's just say if you're LSU and you're recruiting a kid from Orlando, he doesn't care.
No.
He doesn't care.
I mean, you saw what happened in basketball. The kid from North Dakota committed to South Carolina. Somebody committed more money to him.
Yeah.
And then he goes off to West Virginia. Now, if he's a kid that grew up in the state of South Carolina,
maybe it's different.
Maybe it's a different ballgame.
Yeah. Number 7 on Andy's list, Alabama. And his point was well taken here, Terry. You would think Alabama would be much higher on this list. But again, looking at it through the current lens of an available job and what is happening in the college, space. And he said, listen, and you'll see what he means, because they went from 1 to 10. I'm going backwards. But he made a great point. And I talk about this a lot here in our state, too. From a demographic standpoint, Alabama has very limited resources. The program has for generations punched above its state's weight.
Oh, yeah.
And there's no doubt of that. And then with Saban, it was really taken to another level because of everything Nick Saban did. And the school did give him the resources. But now, in the NIL space, Andy, I think his quote was, there's only so many millionaires in Alabama, and you can't just create millionaires.
No, and you can't bust them in. And at the end of the day, I mean, you look at the size of the cities in the state of Alabama. I think, Birmingham is the biggest city.
Yeah.
And they're like
the states of Alabama and South Carolina, again, not to go off on too much of a tangent, but demographically, they are near mirror images of one another in population density, in what they can churn out, in terms of sports. Again, you're talking about states that have roughly a population of 6 million. Birmingham is the equivalent of the Greenville, Spartanburg, Anderson area.
Yep. It's eerie how they're almost the same market size.
Columbia is about double the size of Montgomery, but you think of the capital city, and then, they've got the Mobile area. We have Charleston, and then you've got pockets here or there.
Right.
But I've looked at the numbers.
Yeah.
And I mean, household income, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
It's just they've had this guy named Bear Bryant, this guy named Nick Saban.
Yes. That's it. That's the difference more than anything else, is they've just been doing it for longer, and they're used to giving more because of it. But in today's world, asking Alabamans to compete financially with Texans will always be a losing battle for Alabamans. There's just nothing you can do about it. That's not a knock.
A lot of people lose to the Texans.
It's
okay.
Yes. It's like we say here, even in our state, there's as many people in Metro Atlanta as there are in South Carolina.
It's just a reality, man.
And if you want to look at it from a Texas stand, there's as many people in Metro Dallas as there are in Alabama. That's reality.
It's the reality of the world,
that's
man.
Reality.
And now Saban's gone.
Yeah. Number 6 on the list, Notre Dame. A lot of it speaks for itself. National brand, gigantic fan base, many of whom never went. They'll always be big on television, no matter who they're playing. Either you love them or you hate them. They are polarizing, but people love to see Notre Dame lose. Notre Dame gets a lot of resources, and now the Catholic Church has decided to embrace NIL to a large degree. They just played for a national title.
Notre Dame a Catholic church, Jay?
Well, it's a Catholic school.
What I'm saying, it's Catholic school.
It is Catholic school.
Catholic school.
It is Catholic.
Got touchdown Jesus there.
Yeah, it's a Catholic. So they've decided
they're going to be okay. Yes,
they understand what their alums want, and they'll do that. All right, that's the bottom 5. Notre Dame 6, Alabama 7, Michigan 8, Clemson 9, Penn State 10. The top 5 from Andy Staples. Best jobs in the country. We'll give it to you on the other side. Welcome back in. Final few minutes of our second hour. Top of the 5 headlines of the day. 5:15 more from Shane Beamer from the Welcome Home stop last night. Some interesting things to say about his program. We'll get into that for you. Elijah will be back next hour, playing the role of Bill Gunner this time.
Yeah. Why not?
Yeah, so we'll talk about boats.
Boats?
Yep.
Yeah, Elijah loves boats.
That's right.
He talks about boats all the time.
So continuing here, the final few minutes, Andy Staples of On 3, our buddy Andy putting out his top 10 best jobs in college football. Again, the exercise today to give you some insight, he and Ari kind of looking at it. Ari especially was doing it, but I think Andy was looking at it in a similar vein. If the job were open and you're the candidate, being wooed by the school, what resources do you provide? Because you might say that some of these schools, like Michigan, just won a title a couple of years ago, but are they really in the upper echelon?
Right.
Not necessarily. Again, a lot of Michigan is, hey, we're Michigan.
Right. I mean, Michigan has lagged behind Ohio State constantly over the years.
So we've given you the bottom 5, 6 through 10. Again, I'll do it for you. Notre Dame 6, Alabama 7, Michigan 8, Clemson 9, Penn State 10. Now, Andy's top 5. At number 5, LSU. His points today were LSU has won 3 titles this century, if you will. LSU does not have an in-state rival in terms of any type of sharing of money or competition for said monies. Sorry, Lafayette. Sorry, Monroe. Sorry,
University of New Orleans?
Sorry, I don't even know if the Privateers have a football.
Don't think they have football.
Tulane does, but that's a private school.
Different ball.
Anyway, LSU, number 5. And he basically almost said you can win there regardless of who the
3 different coaches have won 3 national titles.
Yes. And it is Brian Kelly's term, but they do have a lot of resources and a lot of talent. And that talent, it's kind of like Georgia. They grow up wanting to play at LSU. I will always be here for you, Coach. That kind of an attitude.
It's going to be interesting when you talk about money because, again, Louisiana doesn't have gigantic cities and things of that nature. I mean, there's money there.
There is money.
But it's not like
it's not Texas
money.
No, it's not Texas money. There is money.
And they're all supportive of this football program.
And there's some oil money and a few other things, so there is money. But, again, no in-state rival.
Right, which is very important.
Yeah, big. That's huge. Number 4, Oregon. And, a few years ago, Oregon's not touching this list. But now, and they've had good years. They really have. They've had good years. But now Dan Lanning, in a similar vein to Kirby Smart, in addition to what the administration is doing, because, again, you can't just look at Dan Lanning, but the administration has seen, we know now what kind of coach to go target, what that coach needs. Everybody wants stuff. What do they need? And it's working.
Well, let's think about it.
You won the Big Ten.
Real quick, Mike Bellotti built it. Chip Kelly played for a national championship. Mark Helfrich played for a national championship. We forget.
And don't forget Rich Brooks.
Rich Brooks really, he probably set the table.
He got it going.
He set the table, then Bellotti got it going, hand off to Chip Kelly.
Yeah.
And then, let's face it, now you have Lanning. A lot of coaches have won there. As long as Phil Knight's running Phil Knight University, the resources, and by the way, Austin's a great place. Eugene, Oregon's really cool. Yep. There's a lot to love about that place.
And now they're a Big Ten school.
Yes, they are. So now they got Big Ten money.
Yeah, now they're a Big Ten school. And Phil Knight has kids.
He does?
That also love Oregon.
Really?
Yeah, they're going to be fine.
Okay, I didn't know Phil Knight had kids.
They're going to be fine.
Look at you.
Number 3.
TMZ in it over there.
That's right. I do what I can, too. Do what I can. Number 3, Texas.
Stunning.
Texas.
I'm stunned there are only 3.
Now, I'll tell you, Ari had them number 1. And Andy said, not quite yet.
I was thinking they were going to be 1 or 2.
Yeah, not quite yet.
I think I know who number 1 is, but go ahead.
Number 2. All right, well, you're going to get it because I'm going to tell you number 2 is. Then you're going to.
Number 3, Texas. We all know why.
Yeah. Number 2, Ohio State University.
Now I know who number 1 is. That's interesting. I thought Ohio State might be number 1.
Well, the point is basically the top 2 have so many similarities. They are easily the biggest brand in the state. Their states are mad for them.
Oh, ridiculous.
In states where there are professional sports, these programs are number 1. Sorry, Bengals. Sorry, Cavs. Sorry, even Reds. Right? Or Browns.
Yeah.
Ohio State is number 1 in Ohio.
Oh, absolutely.
And that takes us to the number 1 program, Andy Staples' opinion, the University of Georgia.
Easy. Yeah. I mean, not easy number 1, but it's easy. If it's not Ohio State or Texas, easy, it's Georgia, right?
Yeah.
It's those 3.
Georgia, again, talent rich. Kids grow up loving Georgia, wanting to play for Georgia. The school will do everything it needs to do, right?
Yep.
To make it happen. You are, and Andy made a good point too. People like being close to home. And when there's a kids in the South, like they can get to Athens real easy, especially if you're from Metro Atlanta, you know, or if you're from Florida, you can drive up 75. It's pretty easy.
Give you a quick one. I did a little sports talk radio work in Atlanta years ago, and they gave us pockets and tons of research. The number one topic to talk about in Atlanta?
Georgia Bulldog football.
Easy. Not even a close number two.
Georgia Bulldog football 1, Braves 2, Falcons 3. And then stuff.
Be honest with you, Georgia Bulldogs 1, Georgia Bulldogs 2, Georgia Bulldogs 3.
Georgia Bulldogs spring football 2.
And the research is unbelievable.
Yeah. No, it's yeah. And the Braves are huge.
Yeah,
Falcons are, you know.
It depends, but Georgia football, man.
It's like my daughter that goes there. She's like, Dad, all people wear around campus is Bulldogs and Braves. Bulldogs and Braves. Bulldogs and Braves.
It's crazy.
Good stuff. Thanks for hanging.
Oh, dude, it's always good hanging out with you, brother.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
Headlines of the day. Elijah's going to come back around. Lots more to do in the final hour. Keep it here. Okay. Ready? All right, 3, 2, 1. All right, Jay Phillips here in the traffic center. Just a couple of quick accidents to tell you about. Farming Creek Road between Dreer Shoals and Highway 176. Broad River at St. Andrews Road. Please be careful at that intersection. And Whaley Street near Wayne Street, not too far from campus. Those are what we have right now. We'll keep you updated all afternoon. All right, I get to do some more traffic here because I never get to do this, so it's fun for me. But it's probably not fun for you if you're near any of these. And if you're not yet, well, then try to avoid them. Farming Creek Road between Dreer Shoals and Highway 176. Whaley Street near Wayne Street off of downtown, not too far from campus. And Broad River at St. Andrews, always heavily traveled. Please be careful in all those. Avoid them if you have a chance to. We'll keep you updated on everything else going on this afternoon. But all the way, really otherwise, all of those other accidents pretty much cleared up. So that's good. Y'all be careful. We'll keep you updated. It is 5 o'clock news time on a Tuesday. Welcome back in. Also, the final hour of the post-game show. Jay Phillips here in the Herndon Chevy Studios. Ed Bird at Master Control. And Elijah should be joining us in just a little bit. Last night in Atlanta, Elijah won't like this, but hey, it was pretty cool. 22-year-old rookie A.J. Smith-Shawver took a no-hitter into the 8th inning. And according to the report from the AP, he realized after a while that his teammates were avoiding him. Yeah, when you have a no-hitter, you don't want to jinx it, right? And that's how baseball people are. He did pitch into the 8th for the first time as a pro. Wasn't quite able to get it done. Santiago Espinal had a single to center to start the 8th inning, but it didn't matter in the end. A one-hitter for the Braves as they beat Cincinnati last night 4-0. Smith-Shawver said, I started like really kind of noticing in the 5th, and everybody really got away from me 6th and 7th. I was like, okay. This is real. Just trying to go out there and execute pitches, do the same thing I've been doing with a little bit more adrenaline. That was only his 11th professional start, just his 5th so far this season. Eniel De Los Santos, one of the Braves' new bullpen pitchers, did have a walk in the 9th inning, but that did complete the one-hitter Atlanta's second shutout victory of the season. So a one-hitter last night for Atlanta. Way to go, A.J. Smith-Shawver. Braves and Reds at it again tonight. Andrew Abbott starts for Cincy. He is 2-0 with a 2.84 in 19 innings pitched. Chris Sale going for Atlanta. Chris is doing okay. He had one bad game, really, but he's 1-3 with a 4.84 in 35 and a third. 7:15 first pitch tonight from Truist Park. Good news for Columbia's Dustin Johnson. He is getting a special exemption to take part in next week's PGA Championship up at Quail Hollow in Charlotte. Two-time major winner, of course, U.S. Open now 9 years ago, the 2020 COVID Masters. His inclusion, again, means he got a special exemption. He has finished in the top 10 of 2 live events, but he missed the cut at the Masters in April. The PGA chose not to create a category for live golfers. So instead, there are special exemptions. Says Kerry High, the championships director for the PGA. We have the flexibility to invite those players who are deserving from whichever tour. 16 live golfers will be part of the field at Quail Hollow next week, including, amongst others, Bryson DeChambeau, Sergio Garcia, Phil Mickelson, Cam Smith, and Joaquin Neiman. Xander Schauffele is your defending champion. But DJ will be part of the field in Charlotte next week. That came out just a little while ago. The Big 12 today has extended Brett Yormark, their commissioner, through 2030. He had originally agreed in 2022 to a 5-year deal, but he's been doing really well. He said in a statement after this was announced, quote, "We've made great progress over the last 3 years, and our best days are ahead. I am thrilled to continue to work alongside our member schools as we grow and strengthen the Big 12 into a conference that is innovative and prepared for what the future may hold." I like what he has done, and we can sit here and talk about the relative strength of the Big 12 when it comes to the Big 10 or the Southeastern Conference. But I think what we are seeing, especially that I like, is that top to bottom in major sports really is maybe the most competitive of any of the power leagues. You know, it's just from one game, 1 week to the next. Do you really know who the best teams are? I don't know. I mean, you're certainly going to have the cream rise to the top, but they've done a really nice job in getting those Pac-12 schools, the 2 Arizona schools, and Utah and Colorado to come in has been a real boon for them. I think Houston has been great, and BYU has been great. I reserve my judgment, honestly, on Cincinnati and Central Florida, but they're in, so who cares, right? But I think he's done a really, really good job for that league, perhaps better than a lot of people would have given him credit for, all things considered. But he has been extended. Now, it doesn't say what he's making. I know Greg Sankey makes in like the $4 million range, so probably a little less than that, but he'll be there at least through 2030. Speaking of football, we mentioned this earlier in the program, but if you missed it, Clemson and Notre Dame are going to be announcing a 12-year scheduling agreement in football. They will play each other annually from 2027 through 2038. So far, they have played 8 times. And have some big ones, including a playoff game not too long ago. But for both schools, according to this report from David Hale of ESPN, he writes, the agreement has practical implications. Notre Dame ensures a marquee matchup on its schedule as it hopes to build a playoff resume as an independent. For Clemson, an annual game against one of the biggest brands in college football figures to juice ratings for the Tigers, as the ACC begins a new era in which revenue is distributed in part based on television ratings. There is also this, and I'm going to read verbatim here because I think this is a very interesting point. The agreement, David writes, also offers scheduling flexibility and insurance for both schools as the SEC continues to discuss moving to a 9-game conference slate. The Tigers play South Carolina annually in a rivalry game, but they also have future home-and-home scheduled against LSU, Georgia, and Oklahoma. A 9-game SEC slate could put some of those future matchups in jeopardy, though multiple sources told ESPN they do not see annual SEC-ACC rivalry games like Clemson, South Carolina being canceled. But even if all currently scheduled games remain on the docket, he says these matchups figure to help with playoff resumes. And I'll come back to me talking now. Listen, there is Carolina Clemson fans, do not worry. Carolina Clemson is going nowhere. David's right. And I know this is one of those times when I mentioned this to Terry earlier. A lot of people will say, well, yeah, I know it's not going anywhere because there's a law. There is no law that mandates Carolina and Clemson play each other in anything.
Are you going to do traffic?
And I don't think there's ever going to need to be. But should the need ever arise, and they needed to write a law, then they would. But they won't, because they won't need to. And I hope Carolina, I hope Clemson will not only play Notre Dame, but will play those home and homes with LSU and Georgia and Oklahoma. I think that's great. I mean, they play LSU this year for sure, so I know that's going to happen. And they'll play LSU next year, so I know that's going to happen. And I don't see any reason why Clemson wouldn't want to keep playing Georgia. It's a two-way street. But I'm also hopeful that with the new playoff format, we see these kind of games not being schedule killers, because I think that's something that everybody wants, not schedule killers, but better games all season long. I know yours truly will raise his hand and say that, but it's a big deal. And I mentioned this too, not a knock. I call it, this is my observation. Clemson needs this more than Notre Dame needs this when it comes to a 12-year agreement. Notre Dame can pretty much go out to anybody and say, want to play us? It's going to be good for you. Sure. Clemson needs it because of the ACC portion of things. Notre Dame, not as much. Again, Notre Dame's going to get their TV money from NBC, and they're going to be okay. But good for Graham Neff to go do this. I think this is a smart move for Clemson and does keep them in the spotlight. I don't know that they'll finish this deal. I'd love to know what the out clauses look like in certain situations, especially if Clemson were to join another conference one day, or if Notre Dame were to get into a conference one day in football. But for now, doesn't matter. And that this kind of thing may actually be exactly what the Atlantic Coast Conference needs. And my point being, keeping schools like Clemson happy financially. might Jim Phillips, no relation, I always say that, the commissioner of the ACC, go out and encourage others in his conference to do something similar as soon as possible with someone else, or at least to try to really get hold of some marquee long-term agreements. You know, whether Miami were to, I'm just throwing out names, Miami to go play, you know, Oklahoma, or Florida State to schedule Illinois, things like that. I don't know. And on we could go, but you all see the point. But a 12-year deal, I mean, that makes it, almost a generation. That's not too bad for Clemson. So, we'll get official notice on that here, I would think, in the coming days. And finally, NBA last night, we had an absolute stunner, really two, if you will. The Knicks, in overtime in Boston, beat the Celtics 108-105. And last night in OKC, the Nuggets get it done with a 121-119 victory. So both road teams getting big wins last night to immediately turn home court advantage back in their direction. For now, I think I'm still going to hold on to Celtics in 5, but I may need to adjust that to Celtics in 6 as Elijah Campbell joins me now after playing the role of Bill Gunner this morning. Nice to have you, partner. We didn't see the Knicks winning in Boston last night, but they did.
Didn't see them winning in Boston. Also didn't see Boston missing 45 three-pointers. I don't think that happens again, personally.
Yeah, that was kind of shocking, to be honest with you. But how it happens is almost inconsequential. But the Knicks, they're good, man. They're
what
good.
did we say yesterday? Jalen Brunson in the fourth quarter turns into a completely different player.
Yeah.
There's not a player in the NBA right now whose clutch time minutes have been better than Jalen Brunson. That guy, when all the Knicks got to do is make it a close game going into the fourth quarter. Because I do not truly believe that in the 6 games they played with the Detroit Pistons, they were a better team than the Detroit Pistons.
Right.
But I do genuinely believe they had the best player in the fourth quarter in all 6 of those games, and that made the difference in the 4 that counted the most. And that ended up happening last night, too, in the fourth quarter. And Mikal Bridges made a really good defensive play at the end of the game. But if you look at the numbers and you look at Boston going 15 for 60 from three-point line, and the outcome was Knicks by 3 in overtime.
Right.
Don't know how well that bodes for them the rest of the series.
Yeah, make 5 more, which is still a pretty bad percentage, all things considered, and you win comfortably. Tonight in the NBA, Game 2 in Cleveland. Again, road team won there to start with the Pacers winning in Cleveland. Game 2 tonight, 7 o'clock, Indiana at the Cavs. And then tonight, Game 1, Warriors in Minnesota taking on the T-Wolves. Minnesota favored by 6.5 in that one. The Cavs are 7.5-point favorites against the Pacers. And that is our integrated media headlines of the day. 803-948-8327 for all your home theater needs and so much more. Nobody better than integrated media. We'll come back, talk a little Gamecock football, and we'll get Elijah's review of what it's like to portray Bill Gunter on a morning show or something along those lines. We'll be back. If you're a homeowner looking to make some improvements or want to consolidate some high-interest debt, not a bad idea in this current climate. A home equity line of credit could be a great option for you and your family, and Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union is a fantastic group to work with. They're local, they're not-for-profit, and they have been serving the financial needs of Midlands members since the 1930s. And their home equity lines of credit offer great low rates, plus You can pay lower closing costs and application fees than you do with the big banks. And it's really convenient because you can unlock your home's equity and then access that line of credit over a 10-year draw period to assist with all of your needs and goals. One room now, one room later. Pay for it as you can. Hey, that's the beauty of it. Apply today at palmettocitizens.org. Better yet, stop in and see any of their 14 convenient Midlands locations. Palmetto Citizens, achieve your potential. Seventeen minutes after 5 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon. Welcome back into the post-game show. Grayson Griner going to join us on tomorrow's program, talk a little Carolina baseball, what he's been up to now that his playing days are over. Maybe throw in a little bit about the Braves or other stuff. But, Grayson will be with us tomorrow. Jay Phillips here in the studio. Elijah Campbell is back after getting up really early and working with Jen and Preston, which I'm sure they appreciated because you're not Bill Gunner. Oh, did I say that out loud? I didn't mean to. I'm sorry. That's not that. That's. Are we on, Ed? Are we? There's live.
I think this microphone's on.
Are these live?
We're live.
Uh-oh. I'm sorry. Well, what I meant to say was, how was it? Now, I was under the impression before you answer. Sorry, that maybe after doing some post program work this morning here in the building, that like you were off to celebrate Cinco de Mayo on the 6th of May, but apparently you decided that you wanted to come back and do this. Or have you
Well, I'm not
celebrated
in
and we
the
don't know?
studio. That's why I am currently snuggled up on my couch right now under a pile of blankets and pillows with my USB mic. Because right before I joined you, Jay Phillips, I think I was asleep for about 3 hours.
Nice.
So
Is this going to throw you off tomorrow, though, or are you just going to, like, stay up and just not worry about it? Like, how's that work?
Oh, I'll still fall asleep by like 10:30.
Okay.
Yeah, this isn't going to slow me down.
Okay.
This is, yeah. No, I will not. My body will not be waking itself up at 4:30 again this morning to go into the studio. I think I will be well trained to get back on my daily schedule tomorrow.
What was your take on the Clemson Notre Dame announcement? How I think it's a pretty big deal.
I love it because those two teams play great football games. I mean, like that was still, I think, one of the more memorable games outside of BYU Coastal Carolina in that 2020 season. But one of those most memorable games was Notre Dame knocking off Clemson. And even though Trevor Lawrence couldn't play, DJ Uiagalelei having the best game of his Clemson career, it really went all downhill from there. But that was a phenomenal football game. Like, I think every time these two teams play, that usually produces a really good football game. And I'm here for more good football games, more good options during the season. And Notre Dame and Clemson are two big brands that produce great football games every time they play. So I'm all for it. I love it. And I love scheduling it 12 years in advance too. So it can become kind of a staple in the schedule too. And I love that they're still doing the same thing, Notre Dame is, with Florida State and Miami too. I mean, we get convicts versus Catholics again every year. The Florida State Notre Dame games that were a staple of college football in the 90s. All of that's great. So I am all for what Notre Dame is doing with their schedule and keeping the three of Florida State, Miami, and Clemson on the schedule for a pretty long amount of time.
You know, I'd love to see, and I don't know if South Carolina needs to do it. I mean, hopefully we get some kind of, longer-term scheduling situation with the Southeastern Conference. And, you know, if nobody else is ready, I mean, I think we're going to go to the 3-6 format when they go to 9. I certainly hope so, instead of the daggum 1-8. Because, again, if they do the 1-8, or worse yet, stay at 8, then, again, what was the 30 years of what we did prior for? But beyond that, Elijah, because I'd like to see Georgia and Tennessee back on Carolina's regular rotation. I don't know if that's how it'll work. If I had to pick one of them, it'll be Georgia. But, some form of Georgia, Tennessee, Kentucky, or something like that as permanence, I think would be good, because I think Carolina, Kentucky really has become a thing. I do. I think it has. I hate not having Georgia, Tennessee, and Florida on the schedule. Maybe some fans don't, but I'm different than some people. I just want as many great games as possible. But beyond that, like, could Carolina do this? You know, you're going to see Miami here pretty soon if you're the Gamecocks. But only, I think, a couple of years. You know, you got this one off with Virginia Tech, which I'd like to see more of. But North Carolina State, Georgia Tech, I just, especially if we go to a format where you can be rewarded for playing and losing. When I say rewarded, that it won't be punishing, I suppose, is the better way to say it, if I'm going to make a word choice. But like around here, who would that be? You know, I'd love an annual matchup with North Carolina, to be perfectly honest with you. Doubt it'll happen, but I'd love that.
Oh yeah, or again, or even a rotational one. Like, there's so many schools around here. I mean, you could even have one year where you play Duke, right? And it might not be as challenging, but, like, have one with an ACC team within a 2-hour drive of your campus. Like, I think that would be fantastic. It gives you more good football games, and it helps with your schedule. The better schedule you have, it gives you more margin for error to where you can be a team like last year, where you go 9-3 and you're considered to be in the college football playoff, right? I mean, there were 3 schools that had 3 losses last year, all considered to be actual contenders for the college football playoff. All of them were in the SEC. 2 of the 3 had very tough non-conference schedules. Ole Miss flubbed theirs, essentially.
Yeah.
But, I mean,
their toughest non-con was Wake.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Dumb.
Yeah. No, I didn't. I get it.
And that did them a disservice, honestly, at the end of the year. That did them a disservice because were they really ready, or even the beginning of the year, were they ready to even play a team like Kentucky? No, because they didn't test themselves against anybody. That became their first big test. And it wasn't even a big test. It was just a small test. When you went from doing, basic counting math to, at least making the jump to Algebra 1 with no intermediary, that made it look hard, right? And then you get into the calculus of the SEC football season against real SEC schools. Sorry, Kentucky. But you get into the real SEC schools, and it gets harder. They finally won some games. But that may be one of the reasons that they ended up losing to 4-8 Kentucky was because they just, they played nobody except for mighty MTSU in the first 3 weeks of the season. And then they fall on their face when they actually have to play somebody.
Yeah, that's a great point. And you make a point about drives. I mean, seriously, 4 hours in terms of ACC schools, Clemson excluded because, again, they're not going anywhere schedule-wise. But 4 hours. Virginia Tech, Georgia Tech, and every ACC school in North Carolina. You can be there in 4 hours. I mean, Virginia Tech, a little farther, but it's so easy to get to Virginia Tech from Columbia. Just straight up 77 and then hit Roanoke, and 20 minutes later you're in Blacksburg. It's not hard at all to get there. They could do that, but I do like what Clemson and Notre Dame have signed up for here. Speaking of which, Ed Bird, if you would, sir, cut number 5 on today's list, please. This is Shane Beamer last night down in Somerville. When it comes to increased expectation, here's what he had to say.
Certainly, you want high expectations. Our players and the people in our program, I believe, embrace those high expectations and understand that with those expectations, you have to prepare the right way, that it doesn't just happen, because there's plenty of teams, and we've talked about it a lot as a team, there's plenty of teams every year that have high expectations and fall well short of those expectations, and it's usually coming out of the gate as well. So understanding that there's a lot of expectations, and rightfully so, at our place. You want that as a coach, where there are high expectations within the media, with the fan base, but making sure too that that's all talk. Right. That last year at this time, nobody thought we would win 9 games and be in the mix for a playoff spot at the end of the season. This year, we need to make sure we do a great job of not sitting here listening to everybody tell us how good we're supposed to be, and understanding the work that goes into it. But certainly, it beats the alternative of everybody picking you to be dead last or anything like that. I like the expectations of being up there higher.
He makes an interesting point in there, Elijah. This year, or last year, and nobody thought we'd do anything. And maybe that's a motivator. All right, what is it this year? Because then, as he says, now we can't sit around and listen to people tell us how good we are. So it'll be interesting to see what buttons are trying to be pushed. Because as we know, honestly, going from 5 wins to 9 wins in a relative sense is probably easier than going from 9 to 10 to 11.
Well, yeah, because now you're the hunted, right? You're not taking anybody by surprise. Last year, I think you probably took some teams by surprise. I know you definitely took Kentucky by surprise. I know I've picked on Kentucky a lot here in this segment, but you definitely took Kentucky by surprise because they saw that Old Dominion tape and didn't realize you had it like that defensively. And sure enough, Dylan Stewart proved that he had it like that off of the edge. But there's a couple of games last year where I think the teams probably really underestimated South Carolina, whether it be, Kentucky on the road, maybe LSU to a degree might have underestimated how hard it was going to be coming into Willie B and winning. But now, Lenore Sellers isn't sneaking up on anybody. Now teams know that it might take more than one set of arms to sack Lenore Sellers if you are to win your pass rush rep and get into the backfield. It's going to be a little harder because teams know they know your secret weapons now. Like Lenore Sellers this time last year was talked about as like the big unknown for this South Carolina team, and that's why people didn't have a lot of faith, because all they saw of him was 1 touchdown rush versus Vanderbilt and tearing up poor Furman in the second half of a game in 23. Now people know. And same thing with Nick Harbor, too. Now people know about Nick Harbor. Shoot, Todd McShay has him as the 11th overall pick in next year's draft. Like, the talent on your team now is no longer, like, the question mark. Like, the same questions we had last year, I think we're pretty well answered, and we know what we get from those guys going into 2025. You just have a different set of questions. But I don't think you're taking anybody by surprise this year, especially on the offensive side of the ball, and especially with big number 6 on the defensive line.
Shane Beamer in Aiken tonight, I believe, for the Welcome Home Tour. Again, those comments last night down in Somerville. Lamont Paris had some interesting things to say, too. We'll touch on that as part of the drive around the SEC. And one quick update for you. In a very rainy Milan, it is 4-3 Inter Milan over Barcelona in the final leg of their Champions League semifinal. 7-6 Elijah Campbell on aggregate. I just told a buddy of mine in the commercial, I'm waiting for a lion to run on the pitch because that's about all this game is missing. Otherwise,
is a loose animal on the field.
Otherwise, it has everything. All right, drive around the SEC coming up on this Tuesday.
Great job this morning, by the way. No problem, Emmy. I will. Yeah, that's half the battle. Yeah, it is. Coffee helps, but nah. I never done Red Bull. If I did Red Bull, my hair would probably turn black. Yeah, man. About a minute away. I'll use the technical term go. Go.
From the Wetzel's Automotive Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell. The few accidents to report to you, they're causing some issues out on the roadways this afternoon. Starting with one on I-77 northbound at Blythewood Road near exit 27. Also have an accident on North Main Street near Lorick Avenue, Sandfield Road at Langford Road, and lastly, one on US 21 at Blythewood Road.
Just like a pro.
It is Drive Around the SEC time on this Tuesday. Welcome back in. Jay and Elijah with you. Ed Bird at Master Control. Elijah pulling double duty today. Appreciate his willingness to hop back on for an hour here on the regularly scheduled programming.
That's right. My normal radio home.
That's right. After playing the role of Bill Gunner this morning. Did you talk? I don't know how it works on the morning show. Is there a section of the program where you're required to talk about boats or boating in general? Maybe golf from a boat. I don't know what the exact rules are for Bill Gunner.
Yeah. When they had the boating segment this morning, I was completely lost and clueless, and I kind of sat in that chair like Ricky Bobby in the interview where he doesn't know what to do with his hands. So I'm like, I don't know what to do with my hands or my voice. I have no boat. I am no boat expert.
Well, only one day, right? You are back tomorrow.
I'm like SpongeBob. I don't even have my boating license.
Okay.
And, I may never pass that test.
Yeah. You are back tomorrow. They don't tell me anything, so I don't know.
Oh yeah. Okay. We'll be back to regularly scheduled programming for tomorrow because Bill Gunter will be returning tomorrow.
You want me to start with conference basketball or baseball first?
Ooh, basketball.
All right. The Florida Gators, who won a national championship this past season, have now, as you might imagine, extended and given Todd Golden a raise. Coach Golden has a new 6-year, $40.5 million contract. He will be in Gainesville now through the 31 season. This also takes him into the top 5, Elijah Campbell, at $6.75 million per year, 36-4 this past season. He's the youngest coach to win the national championship since Jim Valvano did it in 1983. This is not surprising in any way, shape, or form, but I guess maybe the top 5 salary is the only thing that I don't want to say raises an eyebrow. Like, why would you do that, Florida? Because there could definitely be competition for his services.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, think about it. How many active coaches right now, because of all the guys that have retired within the last couple of years, have national championships? Like Danny Hurley, Scott Drew. Trying to think back on the list right now. Jay Wright's retired.
Yeah, Bill Self.
Tony Bennett's retired. Bill Self. John Calipari.
Yep.
Rick Pitino.
Yep.
Does the list stop there? I'm trying to cycle through years in my memory of teams that have won national championships. And I don't know if there is any other championship winning.
Yeah, because you mentioned 3 that are done. Yeah, I can't. Unless
Roy's not coaching anymore. Coach K is not coaching anymore.
And you think like Mark
Those
Few
guys made up for a lot of them.
Mark Few hadn't done it yet, and Matt Painter hadn't done it yet. No, I think you nailed him, man.
So I think he's on a list of like 4 or 5.
If he's top 5 now, who do we have? Bill Self, Danny Hurley. You just mentioned one of the Coach Cal. I'm trying to think of who else would be top 5. I don't have it in front of me if y'all are wondering. Was Matt Painter in that group?
Matt Painter might be. Let me look this up real quick just to give us an idea
because it's not going to be, say, I don't think it's Rick Barnes or Bruce Pearl. I don't think it's not Rick Barnes. Pearl's probably up there. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. But anyway, and look, I know there are things that surround Todd Golden that haven't necessarily completely gone away. So I do think that's kind of still lingering in the background somewhere. But from a business standpoint, this makes perfect sense.
I mean, yeah, if you win a title, you put yourself in rarefied air.
Well, and at that age, and again, he will be, I don't know what job, but he could certainly be sought after. If a Danny Hurley wanted to go to the NBA, would Connecticut look at Todd Golden? Yes. If, and I don't know. I mean, if Mark Pope were to suddenly just decide not to want to coach, would Kentucky look at Todd Golden? Yes. Texas might be looking at a guy like that. Who knows?
So before this new contract kicks in for Todd Golden, the top 5 highest paid head coaches from just like an annual salary. Bill Self at number 1, $8.8 million. Like that, he's got a pretty steep lead over number 2, which is John Calipari at $8 million flat. Then Dan Hurley at 7.775, and then Tom Izzo 6.19.
Okay.
And then number 5, you're gonna get a kick out of this, Jay Phillips. I'll give you one more guess, and my hint will be Big Ten.
Brad Underwood?
Close. Brad Underwood is 14th. You're thinking of Mick Cronin.
Oh, my. At UCLA. They needed to get him out there. Yeah, okay. Yeah, sorry. I was thinking
Mick Cronin is making.
I was thinking actual Big Ten, not fake West Coast Big Ten.
Yeah, fake Big Ten. It is a fake Big Ten school. But fake Big Ten Mick Cronin makes more than Bruce Pearl and Rick Barnes and Scott Drew. Scott Drew, who has won a national championship.
Yeah. All right. Oh, there you go. But now, so Todd Golden's going to be 4th on the list, yeah?
He will. Yep. That will put him squarely in 4th.
There you go. Baseball tonight across the Southeastern Conference. Louisville and Vandy get it going in Louisville at 6 o'clock. Top of the first just got underway in Knoxville. Tennessee State and Indiana State. Florida hosts South Florida tonight. Alabama
Tennessee
travels
State and Indiana
to
State?
What I say?
Eddie George walking through. You said Tennessee State and Indiana State?
No, I said Tennessee, Indiana. Did I say Tennessee State?
Yes.
Sorry. Tennessee.
I was like, oh, Tennessee State.
No, it's Tennessee still in the Tennessee State is not in the Southeastern Conference. But Tennessee
fighting Robert Covingtons versus the fighting Larry Birds.
Tennessee hosting Indiana State tonight. They just got going. Actually, top of the first. Just got started. Bama is at Troy. Kansas at Missouri. Oh, poor Missouri. Texas hosting Lamar. LSU hosts Grambling. Texas A&M travels to Houston. That's your SEC baseball tonight. Ed Bird, if you would, sir, cut number. Do I have time for this? Ooh, no, I don't. You know what? I tell you what. Let me save it because I want to hear Elijah's take on this. I got some sound from Lamont Paris that I want to get to. So let me tell you right now, I'll wrap the drive around the SEC, brought to you by Herndon Chevy. Hey, do yourself a favor. Stop by the showroom. See why Herndon makes you smile. Is Lamont Paris smiling about portal additions? He answers that question, and you'll hear it when the postgame show returns. Welcome back in. Final few minutes of the post-game show here on this Tuesday. Again, remind you that tomorrow, former Gamecock and Detroit Tiger Grayson Griner will be with us on the program. In fact, I believe he will be in this very room, 4:15.
Ooh, in person.
Looking forward to that. Yeah, Grayson's awesome.
That's fun. You just got to come downstairs.
Yeah, that's right. He works here in the building now. Not for us, for somebody else. But, hey, that's cool. And I know his boss, and I said I'll write him a note. So that worked.
Yeah, write him an excuse.
Yeah.
Be a team player.
That's right. It's good to know people. Inter has outlasted Barcelona in extra time, 7-6 on aggregate, 4-3 today.
Ooh.
After 2 hours of rainy soccer. 13 goals in 2 games, man.
Oh, I love it.
You know. Now, listen, tomorrow I just need my team to score 2 while allowing none. So it can be boring as all get out. I don't care because this was not. But whatever it takes. But Arsenal tomorrow. So you'll be interviewing Grayson by yourself.
Yes, and while we enjoy you suffering because PSG is going to
Stop.
keep them,
Come on, man.
is going to keep them from Champions League glory.
Come on. That's terrible. I thought you're my friend.
Well, we are Spurs fan first here.
I know.
On this program.
I get it. Club before country and all that.
Me and Mrs. Phillips will be quietly cheering for your downfall.
No, my wife did. She's like, I hate seeing him happy when they're doing good. She's so. Speaking of happy, as I mentioned, cut number 14 on today's list, please, Ed Bird. Lamont Paris, an extended cut here. But, all right, you had some hits and misses in the portal. You got to keep a guy in the portal who you thought was going to leave in terms of Cam Scott. So, overall, how'd you do?
I think we did as well as we could. I think we did a really good job with making pivots when you had to make pivots, and that's just, you have to adapt. And so I thought we did a really good job in some situations where it looked like one thing was going to happen, something else happened, and that's happening more now than ever before. It used to be we thought we were going to get a commitment from this kid, and then you lose it in the 11th hour to someone else. You kind of sort of thought you were going to get it done, but it didn't, and then you have to pivot. Now it's like you get a commitment. I don't know if that's a word that we should call it anymore, but this thing happens to where you're in an agreement of what's going to happen, and then that changes 3 weeks later. And you've been counting on something for 3 full weeks, and then you have to pivot. So I think we've done a really good job of turning the page, getting on to the next, gathering information quickly, developing relationships with the people that you can as quickly as you can, and then assessing. I think it's constant assessment of what you have, what you need, what you might potentially need. And then we did all that again with Colin Murray-Boyles out there too, and it's like, okay, here's a player you can take, but if Colin comes back, that doesn't really work, those two together, but he's a really good player. If Colin doesn't come back, he's the perfect fit for us. Do you roll the dice on that and hope that Colin doesn't come back? Or, but at the end of the day, we also wanted to provide an environment that when and if Colin Murray-Boyles decides he wants to come back here, that we would welcome him with open arms. I'm rooting for him to get everything he wants out of this draft process, the information that he wants. But certainly if he decides that the future involves coming back to Columbia, we would be ecstatic about that, and we've put the pieces in to surround him in an environment where he can be extremely, extremely successful.
Elijah Campbell, there's a lot of different ways to process that 2 minutes we just heard, but that last 30 seconds or so feels like when you and I have been talking about, well, there's a sliver of a chance that Colin comes back. That feels like maybe there's a belief that there's something larger there. I wouldn't want to say it's like 50-50, but am I like how I want you to tell me as like I'm the average fan, How do I take what I just heard?
You take that he is being as optimistic as humanly possible because they had a rough portal season. I mean, it really is. I don't think they got exactly enough to feel good about cracking maybe the top 10 in the SEC. I mean, I don't. But I think they're still holding out hope because Colin would help a ton, and that would completely change the outlook of your season if you are able to bring Colin back. I just don't see an avenue where that happens. I would love to share the optimism, but I think what Colin's going to get back in this draft process is that you are a lottery pick, and if you are a lottery pick, you are not coming back to college. So I'm not looking too far into what he said there. I think maybe the biggest takeaway of that clip was they basically had to fire drill it once they got the decommitment from Trace and Eaglestaff, and I don't think they're very happy about Eaglestaff making a commitment to the team and then bailing out on them after they decided that was the player they're going to run their offense and build their team around, only for him at the 11th hour to say, "Oh, sorry, I changed my mind. I want to go to West Virginia." That's what I got from that they're pretty peeved about that, as they should be.
Yeah.
I think he really kind of, for lack of better terms, he really screwed him over there.
Yeah, it's unfortunate to say the least. And I asked Jack Veltri earlier, Elijah, how much could you say it was a net wash to lose Eaglestaff but regain Cam Scott? And Jack made a great point. Look, Eaglestaff is a proven scorer at the D1 level. Cam Scott is not. But, is there any kind of silver lining in the retention of a local player who you expect to take a major step? You expect, I say, to take a major step forward next year from a scoring standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a wash. I think it's still it's hard to say that it's a loss of a player who never actually suited up in your uniform, but it is. For the main part of it being, you got the commitment from Eaglestaff so early in the transfer portal process, and when you do that, like, you're building the rest of your team around what you have in Eaglestaff, and whenever he changes his mind like that, you have to scramble to try to replace the production you thought you were bringing in. And that's just really, really hard to do. That's about as big of a loss as you can get as possible for somebody who just never actually played for you. I think that's ultimately going to be the thing that we look back on and say, if it's another disappointing year, I think we're going to look back at the Eaglestaff decommitment as one of the things that hurt you the most during this whole process.
No, and they did put a lot into recruiting him. And as you heard Lamont say, they clearly thought they had that one wrapped up. And again, no true one coming through. So what that looks like next season could be very interesting as well. Hey, appreciate the final hour today. Thank you, sir. We'll do it here again, all like regular tomorrow. You don't look different, do you? Like, I don't know what happens in the morning. Do you have to shave or?
Oh man, no. I thankfully I'm still the same height. I still look the same. I think I look good for somebody who rolled out of bed and walked into the radio station this morning. So,
nice. All right, that's all it takes. Good stuff. We'll do it again tomorrow. Grayson Griner are going to be with us. See y'all.
Good for this traffic, buddy. Cool. I'll let you know.